All right. We're live. We're live. I couldn't help myself. So I just decided to click the live button because I haven't been live in a while. So I'm excited and I'm glad to be here. I don't know what's going on with StreamYard. Maybe I logged into the wrong account and set up a different subscription, but it booted me out of everything and they revamped everything and changed the payment structure and all that shit to pay for my subscription to use all the features and all that. So I had to redo everything. So now I got a different background. I got to find my background again because it had all the funny names for the parts. And now I don't have it anymore. So I have to look into that and see what's really going down around town. But can you guys hear me? Am I live? Okay, cool, cool, cool. All right, so let's do the damn thing. Shit.
Purchase your tracks today. 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 Purchase your tracks today.
What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? It's great to be back. It's great to be back in studio, back on the mic where I actually sound like I'm with you. It's great to be back. I had a great vacation in Florida. I took the week off. I was planning on going live while I was there, but I had my kids, I had my niece, and it was the holiday season, and my nephew came through, and everybody wanted to do stuff, and it was cool. It was cool. And for the first time in a very long time, several months, I actually had all three of my kids with me, and it was such a great time. I didn't realize how much I missed them and how much I needed that. And it was so bad that once I dropped the last one off and started headed back home to the Midwest, I kind of had a moment, and it was rough. I didn't know how much I needed that. We worry about our kids, and we think about how much they need us, and a lot of times we tend to forget how much we need them too. Oh yeah, I took plenty of pictures, but I ain't posting none of them. I want to. I really want to, but I've been targeted before, when I was back in Florida and shit. And the last thing I want to do, because even back then I was telling people what city and state I was in, and I wasn't that hard to find. And the last thing I want to do is bring that kind of heat down on my children. So I will refrain from that. Plus, moms won't be too happy about that, I don't think. So, I'm just not, you know, it's more of a safety thing. So as far as me and the moms go, we're all kind of on the same page with that. Well, what's up, Sister Iman? Jaden Stewart, Pissed Off Cat says, hit that like button right meow. I like that. That's funny. And Ambitions of a Rider. What's up? What's up? What's up? So, and also, I forgot to mention while I was down in Florida, if you guys go look at my community tab, I got I got a great view of the moon, but my cell phone camera sucked and I didn't get the greatest picture, but I was actually able to see the moon in the sky in front of the clouds. How about that? How about that? And I took a picture of it and I did post it on my community tab. If you guys want to go see it for yourselves, you could go do it. I post the original image first, and then the second image in the post is after I put it through the filter to kind of darken it to dim some of that, some of that glare, so you can actually see the moon a little better, and you can clearly see that it's in front of the clouds. I saw it with my own two eyes, and I tried my best to capture it on camera. Maybe I should get a better camera with a better lens next time I go down there so I can, really capture the moment for you guys, because that shit was awesome. And funny enough, I've been seeing a lot of flat earth content circling around on social media being countered by the globe earth content, and it just blows my mind how ignorant people are, how ignorant and closed-minded people are. It's like all the evidence is right in front of you. The Most High, in the way he created this place, was telling you, and for some reason they're still under that spell, which is weird to me. But that's, I was once under that spell too, because when I first heard about flat earth, I was like, yeah, that's crazy. And I ended up, I guess for lack of a better term, subscribing to it, because in my effort to debunk it, I had a very difficult time, very difficult time. So, I had to go where the truth led me. And trust me, I did not like that road. And it took me a long time, probably a couple of years on YouTube before I was even brave enough to bring it up. And what's funny is, as much as they try to make it seem like it's some kind of fringe idea that's so stupid that only a few people believe it, when I brought it up on my channel, I had a few thousand subscribers. I was probably a little bigger than I am now. And I lost a lot of subscribers. I lost a few hundred, within the first week. Well, not a few hundred, a few dozen, almost 100 within the first week. And when you only got a few thousand like that, that number shows, it reflects. And I was a little dismayed. And somebody in the comments, I can't remember who it was, but I think it was the brother Ronnie Cash. Rest in peace, Ronnie Cash, my good brother. I believe he was the one that said, all those people that left is just you burning off the dead wood. And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right, because these are the people that when shit really starts to get real and I really start sharing with them and showing them, what's actually taking place beneath the surface of what we're being shown, they're going to be too close-minded to accept it, and they're going to reject it, and they're going to go from being supporters to being haters, and it's just going to be a shit show. So let them go about their business. And you know what? It was the best decision I ever made, because now when I talk about flat earth, I gain subscribers. You know what I'm saying? So that in itself lets me know that the truth is getting out there, and it's a lot more accepted than the mainstream media and social media would have you believe. And that's true for everything. Even with the COVID business, I told you guys it was a mass murder operation carried out by the hospitals. Every single person that died from COVID in 2020 died in the confines, isolated in the confines of some medical facility. Literally nobody dropped dead in the street from COVID. No one. There was no recorded deaths of anybody. They weren't picking bodies up off the streets, pulling bodies out of apartments, none of that. Every single person that died from COVID died in a hospital. And guess what they were doing in the hospitals? Misdiagnosing people, putting them on ventilators, blowing their lungs up, putting them on remdesivir, shutting their kidneys down, and isolating them from family members or anybody who can advocate for them. And people didn't believe me when I first said this, but now we're starting to hear stories of people who were alive but were brought into the operating areas of these hospitals to have their organs harvested. They were marked as dead, and the hospitals were preparing to harvest their organs, and the people were alive and came to. And there's stories of people being restrained and murdered anyway, and there's stories of people who escaped. So if they're diabolical enough to do that, don't you think they'd be diabolical enough to pull off a mass murder operation to help push the agenda, which ultimately benefited them because it created more patients with the vaccine? So it's a fucked up world we're living in. Shout out to Shoe87 for the Cash App. Says, appreciate you, bro. Keep dropping knowledge. Appreciate that, Shoe87. It's a crazy world that we live in, and there's a lot of nefarious things that are going on, that have been going on, that people are not willing to accept. And that brings me to tonight's topic, the Maduro indictment. I actually have the entire indictment. I have the full 25-page indictment right here. Let me show you real quick, if my shit don't lag. There it is right there. One of 25, the 25-page PDF of the Maduro indictment. So we can go through this, but it's 25 pages. So we might have to cut it short tonight and go through it on another night. But we're definitely going to go through that shit, because I want to see what he's actually being charged with. And I can't wait to see what this is about over here on the right, the sealed superseding indictment. If you don't know what a superseding indictment is, that means bigger charges than the ones you're already being charged with. Secondary charges, so to speak. The sealed aspect of it means that it's not being released to the public yet. And allegedly, this initial indictment is for the drug trafficking, right? And the sealed superseding indictment would be for the election fraud. That's my assumption. That's my theory. I could be wrong, but if the election fraud isn't mentioned in this initial indictment, it'll be mentioned in the superseding indictment. Excuse me. But nevertheless, when I say it's a crazy world and there's a lot going on that's been going on that people don't want to accept or don't want to believe, shit like this. The cartel of the Suns. Oh, let me finish reading the title. I stopped halfway through the title. Maduro indictment, the cartel of the Sun supply chain. Now, I'm sure you guys heard that Maduro was named the leader of the Carteles del Soles, right? Cartel of the Suns. And it's now being said by Department of Homeland Security that he may not actually be the leader, but he definitely was an active participant. But that name, Cartel of the Suns, was created by local law enforcement there in South America, along with American DEA agents that were investigating this particular group of drug traffickers. And the reason why they came up with the name the Cartel of the Suns is because the cartel, these drug traffickers, were high-ranking politicians and high-ranking military officials using their control of these specific military units to facilitate the trafficking of drugs from Colombia, using Venezuela as an exit port and shipping the drugs north, destined for the United States. And the reason why they were called the Cartel of the Suns is because those military generals wore sun emblems on their uniforms. So every guy wearing that uniform that got promoted to that high rank was presumed to be involved in drug trafficking. Now, when it comes to the supply chain, here's the crazy part. Remember all those stories about Bill Clinton shipping tons of cocaine into Mena, Arkansas? Remember the stories about Rick Ross getting cocaine from the CIA and making millions of dollars a day cooking it up and selling it as crack? Well, guess where all that coke was coming from? You guessed it. Colombia and Venezuela, with the help of their governments. Remember, Colombia was the same country, was the home of Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar was the largest cocaine producer of his time. Pablo Escobar, even when he got busted for crimes in Colombia by the Colombian government, they allowed him to build his own prison, which ended up being basically a vacation camp, a vacation home. Anybody could come visit him anytime. He could come and go as he pleased. It was his shit. So obviously these governments were directly involved in not only the drug trafficking, but that pipeline went both ways because they were also engaging in human trafficking. Remember all the stories you heard about these pedophile parties and all that shit that they attend, that these elites attend? Well, these are some of the elites that attended. These just happen to be the ones that are shipping all the coke. Now, the other guy, the guy on the left, obviously is Nicolas Maduro, the former president of Venezuela, who is now in U.S. custody. The guy on the right is presumably the next Western target, and his name is Miguel Diaz-Canel, and he is the president of Cuba. Now, Cuba is on the radar because they happen to be the Cuban government happens to be one of these communist governments that are corrupt to the hilt, and they also act as a point of a transit point for these drug shipments. So Cuba is also on the chopping block. Now, why is Trump going so hard after Venezuela with the drug trafficking? Why what's his deal with all this drug trafficking, right? Well, the deal with the drug trafficking is the drug money is what funds the entire deep state, or 90% of the deep state operations. It's the drug money. And why would these third world dictators be involved in helping to steal the U.S. elections? Because they want to get their own players in office in America so they can set up the same systems they have in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Mexico, in Colombia, where the government is complicit with the drug traffickers, with the traffickers. And they were successful in doing it in the 2020 election by getting all those Democrats in office and getting Biden in office. But Trump had it on lock because he used the military to put Congress under COG. That's why they never passed any federal laws against the U.S. population. That's why everything the Biden administration did was through executive order and not legislation, because they were restricted from passing legislation. You can go back through those 4 years of Biden and you will see Congress passed bill after bill after bill, and the news reported it like it was going to be the next law. And guess what? None of that shit ever got signed. And I have several streams on my Rumble page pertaining to continuity of government, and that's what the Biden years were. continuity of government. But it was a soft form of COG where the states were allowed to operate and Joe Biden's alleged subordinates were allowed to operate. So whoever was the puppet master for Joe Biden was selecting all the players, and they were being allowed to commit all their crimes, including opening up the borders, bringing in all the illegals, letting all the drugs get trafficked into the country, letting all the kids get trafficked in and out of the country, and create the mess that was created. And now that mess is being cleaned up by the Trump administration. So it was kind of it was a little diabolical, but I understand why it was done. It was done because these networks had already existed and had long since been operating, but they were never operating in the open. They were not operating they weren't so busy to where they were forced to expose themselves. So with the 4 years of Biden's open borders policies, these groups and these networks started exposing themselves because as the illegals were coming in, the ones that were being tracked through these networks, and people were being basically put on a list as being facilitators of what Trump referred to as an invasion, which is exactly what it was. And I talked about the acts of war that Venezuela committed against the United States. The first act was usurping the presidential elections by participating in the fraud that took place in 2020. Also, using that usurpation of the elections by, using the usurpation of those elections to have the borders open, have these sanctuary cities set up for the Venezuelans and the rest of the illegals that were going to be pouring into the country, and use that open border to traffic mass amounts of drugs into the country, human trafficking victims in and out of the country. So that was the second act of war, was flooding the country with the dope and ramping up their human trafficking operations. Because remember, from 2017 up to the Biden administration, Trump and the military were having those tunnels cleared. The underground networks were being busted up and they were being cleared. So once all that was over, the traffickers now had to resort to surface operations, and that open border was their operation. Remember, through all 4 years of the Biden era, the Biden presidency, the Biden term, I should say, Trump had the military at the border, but they weren't really doing much, but they were watching and they were taking notes, and they knew enough of who was who. They knew who were connected and who were not. So when the ICE raids began in Trump's second term, all these networks that had been basically overwhelmed with business were so busy that covering their tracks became almost impossible. Trump went after all the violent, illegal felons, all the criminal aliens is what they were referred to as. Because these were the guys that were marked, that were noted, that had already caught charges and were on the records in the courts here in the United States. So they were known. And through nabbing them, other people started getting grabbed. And now they're on to just grabbing any illegal they can find. Now, there's a lot of fear mongering about the Trump administration allowing TSA to check people's immigration status or turn every name over to ICE who comes through the airport. And a lot of people are worried about that, and rightfully so. You should be worried about that. But this is where overcoming the ignorance is important, right? Because first you have to understand that you're ignorant to ICE's role in a law enforcement capacity. The only action they're allowed to take against American citizens are direct actions of self-defense. Other than that, ICE cannot arrest American citizens. They cannot remand American citizens to the court's custody. They cannot remand American citizens to any type of jail or make any arrest. They can detain you, but once they find out that you're legal in the United States, they have to release you. Or if, let's say, you commit a crime and the ICE agent happens to be the one on the scene to arrest you and you're an American citizen, he'll detain you and turn you over to local law enforcement, who does have the authority to remand you to the local jail. So when ICE runs the names that are coming through the airport, everybody that's got a legal name and so that's got legal status in the United States and presumably a social security number, their names get chucked aside. They don't even get looked at. But the people with a blank slate who aren't documented in the United States, they're the ones that get sought after. That is ICE's role. That is ICE's job. And that is the limit of ICE's authority. They can only arrest people who do not have legal status in the United States. If you have legal status in the United States, unless you're suspected of committing a crime and there's enough evidence to arrest you, that federal agent can only detain you long enough to identify you, and that's it. This is why when we heard about ICE detaining American citizens and the fake news was making a big deal about it, what they weren't telling you was that ICE was detaining people who appeared suspicious, which they're feds. They have the ability to do that, unfortunately. They can stop you for any reason, especially if they're under a directive to seek out certain types of people. That's just what it is. Call it discrimination, call it profiling. Just understand this problem would have never existed if the American people would have stood up and said, you know what, we're not going to stand for this election fraud. Trump won and we know it. But people wanted Biden because they hated Trump so much, and this is what we get now. This is what it takes to clean up the mess, unfortunately. And as much as I don't agree with it, I understand it. But nevertheless, the fake news was trying to make it seem like ICE was arresting American citizens and remanding them to confinement somehow, which obviously was not the case. ICE would stop people and ask them two questions. What's your name and date of birth? You give them your name, you give them your date of birth. They detain you for a few minutes. One goes back to the vehicle, punches your name into the system. You show up with a social security number. They let you go. They can't do anything else to you. That's it. That's the end of it. But what was happening was the people who were being detained were refusing to identify themselves, which under the Constitution, they do have a Fourth Amendment to do so. But what they don't realize is the Constitution does not apply when we are under a state of military control. When you have roving groups of feds all over the country doing sweeps and raids from city to city to city, that's pretty much martial law. Because when the guys in SWAT gear with the big guns show up and start telling people, go inside, you know what people are going to do? They're going to go inside. Even though they don't have to, they're going to. Because of that intimidation factor. But the thing with the ICE raids is these Americans that are defending these illegals, they are a detriment to American society. They are serving they're foreign agents. They're serving a foreign entity that's trying to bring America under foreign influence. Where having governments like these two assholes governments is par for the course. And Trump ain't having that shit. So he's getting all the illegals the fuck out of here. And the Americans that take it upon themselves to obstruct these federal operations, well, they're getting the fuck out of here too. But they're going to American jails while the illegals are getting shipped back to where they come from. And that's the way it should be. Now, there's this big, news about the lady getting shot and all that, and everybody's mad at ICE and this and that. Listen, if these Americans, has anybody been shot by ICE? Probably not, right? Why? Because you stay the fuck out of their way. Because as an American, you understand that this is law enforcement and there's laws against you obstructing law enforcement. You can protect yourself, you can protect your rights. You don't have to answer their questions. The Constitution does apply, but there's an easy way and there's a hard way to do shit. And these people that are defending these illegals, they're picking the hard way to do shit. Because it does not serve them or benefit them in any way to have this influx of foreigners living in our country illegally, and not only living in our country illegally, but being funded with billions of dollars of our tax money. They're not serving any purpose. They're a burden on society and they shouldn't be here in the first place. And any American that defends that is not worthy of being an American. And they should go back to that third world shithole with them illegals, honestly. And for that lady who got shot, Well, what they're not telling you is first she rammed a federal vehicle purposefully. And when the feds jumped out to apprehend her, she decided to punch the gas pedal with a federal agent standing in front of her vehicle. And that federal agent shot her. That's a good shoot. I don't care what nobody says. It's a good shoot. You know why? Because if that liberal white woman was minding her fucking business like we do and left ICE alone to go get them damn illegals and get them the fuck out of here instead of trying to be the hero and defending them, one, she would have never found herself ramming a federal vehicle. That's number one. And number two, she would have never got her face shot off if she would have just been minding her fucking business like the rest of us. But these liberals, they want to play hero and shit, and bad shit happens to them. That's what happens. And these quote unquote, and listen, I'm not no cop sucker, okay? First of all, because when it's a bad shoot, I call it a bad shoot. Like the Sonia Massey situation, the lady with the pot of hot water, and the cops said, I'll shoot you in the fucking face and shot her because she threw water at him. That was a bad shoot. And I called it what it was. And there's been other situations where cops have shot black men for doing the exact same thing that white woman did. The cop standing in front of the car, he punches the gas, runs the car into the cop. The cop shoots and kills him. Self-defense, good shoot. Nobody says shit. All of a sudden, a liberal white woman gets shot, and it's the end of the fucking world. Get out of here. She was looking for that shit. She was looking for it, and she got what she was looking for. Classic case of fuck around and find out. And I don't feel sorry for her because these, like I was about to say, these anti-ICE protesters, a lot of them, they are Antifa members and they are paid agents whose job it is to create chaos and impede federal officers. And they're being sanctioned by their local politicians who happen to be Democrats and want the illegals in America. There is absolutely no reason for any American to get out there trying to impede ICE. There's absolutely no reason for any American to be out there protesting ICE, because essentially what you're doing is you're advocating for the downfall of your own country. So it's sad that the woman got shot, but I'm not going to sit here and act like she's some kind of victim. This is the same bullshit that Black Lives Matter was doing in 2020 with black men. Every time a black man would do something dumb and get his ass shot off by the police, they paint him to be some kind of hero and some kind of victim, which encouraged more black men to go out and do dumb shit and get their asses shot off by the police. Instead of saying, hey, let's not do dumb shit and get our asses shot off by the police. And this is what America should be saying about this woman that got shot. Hey, liberals, stay the fuck out of ICE's way before you get your ass shot off. That's what we should be saying. Instead of being outraged and being mad about it, whether you agree it's a good shoot or you disagree it's a good shoot, what we can agree on is let's use this as a teachable moment so other idiots don't go out there trying to play hero in the name of the illegals and get their asses shot off. How about we agree on that before we even begin to debate whether it was a good shoot or not? I think that's fair, and I think if there's reasonable people on both sides of that argument, I think that's a point that we can agree on. But in my personal opinion, it was a damn good shoot. It was a damn good shoot. How about the Somali daycares now trying to pretend that the Quality Leering Center is now trying to pretend as if they really had operations happening over there when they didn't? How about that? That's a funny one, but we'll get into all that in a minute. But don't forget, guys, follow me over on Rumble. If you haven't followed me on Rumble yet, you're missing out. Get over to Rumble. There's hundreds of videos over there that are not available on YouTube. So Rumble is where it's at. Shout out to my Rumble viewers, my brother David Divining and DJ Spin. Shout out to y'all for being here. Everybody else that's watching on Rumble, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Please, if you haven't hit that thumbs up, hit that thumbs up and say hi in the chat. You know, leaving comments in the chat definitely helps with the algorithm and getting more viewers to the show. That boosts the numbers. Every night when the Rumble chat is popping, the Rumble numbers jump. You know what I'm saying? And then on nights when everybody's lurking, the numbers stay low. And I don't know if you guys notice that, or you don't have the ability to chat because of the device you're watching on or whatever. But it kind of makes me feel like you guys don't really want me to grow like that, or you don't really care if I grow like that. You know what I'm saying? But you know, just put a little thought into it. It costs nothing, and it helps. It costs nothing, and it helps a lot. You know what I'm saying? So there's nothing there's nothing to lose and everything to gain. All right. Now, of course, shout out to everybody that supported the show. We have a set goal of 10 supporters every show. Hopefully we can hit that goal tonight. But I'll make you guys a deal. I'll make y'all a deal. Here's the deal. If we can hit $100 tonight in donations, I will do the entire 25-page indictment. I got extra Red Bulls tonight, so I'm going to be up in a motherfucker anyway. So if we can hit $100 in donations tonight, I'm going to do the indictment. If not, I'm probably going to do the first 2 or 3 pages maybe, and then we'll cut it off, and I'll come back tomorrow, and I'll do the rest of the indictment. But if you guys want it tonight, hit that Cash App, hit that PayPal, hit that Venmo, support the show. Use the tag scrolling across the screen in the banner below. The links that are pinned to the top of the YouTube chat in the black box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow. Just click the yellow. The box opens up. All the links are there. And you can also find those links in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. And I want to give a big shout out to my brother Shoe87 for the Cash App. Says, appreciate you, bro. Keep dropping knowledge. And shout out to my good brother Lee14224 with that faithful support on the PayPal. Shout out to you, brother Lee. And guys, we are at a grand total of 30 right now. So we got 70 more to go. If we hit that $100 mark, I am going to do the indictment. So keep that in mind. And the red X through the PayPal is just to remind you guys that PayPal censors comments, so keep it surface level. What up, Emmanuel Elohim over on Rumble? He says, "What's going on, Citizen Man? What's going on, brother? What's happening? What's happening?" So, government corruption. Government corruption is a nasty, nasty thing. It really is, because when it's corrupt at the head, it's corrupt all the way down. And this is why a lot of these third world shitholes that have first world allies, superpower allies that could actually assist the country and the people of that country could live better. This is why a lot of them don't. It's not only because they're not getting a fair shake from the World Bank and the IMF, which is the case in a lot of countries, mainly in Africa. But here in the West, those third world shithole countries become that way because of corrupt leadership. And when you have leaders in your country that have the ability to appoint judges, handpick prosecutors, handpick military leaders, and so on, if the guy with the power to handpick everybody is a snake, who do you think he's going to handpick? Other people just like himself. Here's a prime example. Obama appointed federal judge blocks West Virginia's ban on artificial food dyes. So the state of West Virginia was actually trying to do something good for their people by passing a bill that would ban food dyes, artificial food dyes, right? And this lady right here, this federal judge appointed by Obama, Judge Irene Berger, granted an injunction sought by the International Association of Color Manufacturers, who dislike the provisions of House Bill 2354, which bans certain products from food in West Virginia. So the international, you see that? An international association. So the world powers have more sway with this Obama appointed judge than the elected representatives of the state of West Virginia. Pay attention, because Obama was a international law, one world government president. And of course, the judges that he would have appointed would be of the same vein. So HB 2354 bans additives like red dye number 3, yellow dye number 5, blue dye number 1, and green dye number 3. Berger concluded that food manufacturers would suffer irreparable harm from high compliance costs and the threat of arbitrary enforcement. Now, here's the crazy part, right? If the dyes are being banned, these are less material that the food manufacturers would have to use in their food products. And the more material you use is the higher the cost to produce that food product. The less material you use is the less it costs to produce that food product. So if these dyes and these additives were banned, that would be less material going into the food product, which would actually increase the food manufacturer's profit margins. Not only that, but it would be beneficial to the consumers because now they're not buying all those chemicals and all those poisons, presumably. So, for her to make the claim that it would cause irreparable harm to food manufacturers is a bullshit claim. But what it probably would cause irreparable harm to is the payout she got from the International Association of Food Colors, or whatever the fuck they're called, of color manufacturers. So this is what mild government corruption looks like, right? We see this all the time, every day, especially in the time of Trump. All these corrupt prosecutors and corrupt judges, and they all got, they all got dirt on their names, but they're running around passing judgment on everybody else, right? Fucking scumbags. All four of these women, none of them have kids, but want to make it okay for our kids to take puberty blockers, hormone pills, and get surgery. And that's Ayanna Pressley, member of Congress. That is Letitia James. That is the corrupt attorney general of the state of New York, who's obviously guilty of mortgage fraud. But of course, the judge sided with her and threw the case out. But she's going to be indicted again, and is probably going to be on some bigger shit. There's Jasmine Crockett, aka Jasmine Crackpot, who just, she's supposed to represent black women, but apparently represents the worst characteristics of black women. And of course, there's Kamala Harris, who's the fake black woman, but somehow she morphed into a black woman for the 2024 election. And none of these politicians have children of their own, but they want to tell us what we can and can't do with our children. And there's millions of Americans out there that either don't see a problem with this or they turn a blind eye to it. Like, prime example would be those liberals that call themselves Christians. And they go to churches ran by false prophets like Pastor Jamal Bryant and so on. They turn a blind eye to the abortion. They turn a blind eye to the pedophilic grooming. They turn a blind eye to the open, blatant Satanism. And they act like these people are holier than thou and are righteous people that have the people's best interest at heart. And they absolutely do not. They're demons casting spells, and the people who believe them and follow them and support them are under that spell. And for us who aren't under that spell, we're looking at it from the outside looking in at how ridiculous it is and how goofy it is for a grown adult to even take anything these people say seriously. But then we step back and we look and we see all of these grown adults, for a lot of us, it's our damn parents, falling for this bullshit, and we can't seem to figure out why. Well, that's because we're trying to understand an unconscious mind from a conscious perspective. And that's why we will never be able to understand what goes on in the mind of a liberal to make them fall for this bullshit that's obvious bullshit. Because we're trying to understand an unconscious mind that's on autopilot. And in my quest to try to understand it, I've gotten as far as this. These are not thinking people. These are doing and feeling people. And what happens is the media bombards them with the same propaganda in different forms. For example, from the time Trump came into office in 2017, well, from the time he started winning the election in 2016, TV shows, movies, all this shit was painting images of the old white conservative man as a racist or as a villain. And then you had all these black propaganda movies being put out. Then all the celebrities and the rappers and everybody started singing the same tune. Trump's a racist, Trump's a racist, Trump supporters are racist. Then the fake news media, every channel, Trump's a racist, Trump's a racist, Trump's a racist, Trump's a... So because these are not thinking people, they never stop to think that, hey, this is the news that's known for lying to us. They never stop to think that, hey, these celebrities are idiots. They can't even manage their own personal lives, but they want to tell us what choices to make politically. They don't stop to think about that. They just look up to these people on the screen as the quote unquote experts, and they do exactly what they're told. And that's as far as my understanding of it goes, because that's as far as they think. They don't think any deeper than what they're told. This is why when COVID was happening and Fauci was on TV telling everybody put a mask on, I was scared to death. And the reason why I was scared to death was because the day Fauci would have got on CNN and told everybody eating children under the age of 3 years old will stop the spread of COVID, you know how many people would have been out there hunting kids? You know how dangerous shit would have became? Or if Fauci would have said, oh, the people who aren't wearing masks are spreading COVID and we have to kill them. For those of us who chose to breathe freely, our lives would have literally been in danger. That's how dangerous these people are, because they're not thinking people. What's up, Lies That Bind over on Rumble? Shout out to you. Shout out to D. Allen Warren. What's up, brother? Good to see you. And BB Woman, what's going on? And Tom, what's up? Mike Hill, what's up? Ground Up, what's up? Salute. Chop Star. Seeing a lot of new names in here that I never seen before, but shout out to y'all, man. Shout out to y'all. Glad you're here. But that's why we can't understand the way these people's minds think. And there's a lot of people out there that disagree with Trump, don't support Trump. And 90% of it comes from propaganda, fake news, and lies. And they literally have been spinning everything that man's been saying and been doing. Now, granted, there's some things that he has done that I can see why a lot of people would disagree with it and be upset with it, like the vaccine thing with Operation Warp Speed. But I've broken that down several times. And I guess I have to do a short video on it so I can just, when it comes up in the stream, I can just go ahead and play the video so you guys can see it. And I won't have to say it again. I can actually take a smoke break while, the virtual me explains it all over again. But the fact of the matter is, this level of corruption has always existed, and people just never saw it. But when Trump came around, he exposed it all, and they hate him for it. And this is why they try to lie. They try to tell every possible lie they can about the man, and none of the shit's working because it's all lies. They tried the Epstein shit back when Trump indicted Epstein, before Epstein was remanded to military custody, quote unquote, killed himself, whatever, right? And that shit fell apart. They were putting out Photoshop pictures, all types of like fake notes and fake emails, all types of stupid shit. And none of it worked. None of it worked. And they're literally back at it again. And people are still falling for it. Like, that shit is old news. That shit's played out. But anyway, San Francisco mayor signs reparations bill, $5 million per black resident. Now, Democrats are scumbags. Let me just start by saying that. The Democratic Party are scumbags. And it's lies like this that keeps black people voting Democrat. The racism lie and the fact that the Democrat Party packed their ranks full of black sellouts like Jasmine Crockett and the rest of them. And they get black people to vote for them based on race and based on lies. Do you know back in 2017, the city of San Francisco, excuse me, had passed a reparations bill to give black residents millions of dollars. And here we are, what, 8 years, 9 years later, damn near, and not a black resident has been paid a single penny. Now they're back with the same lie. Guess why? Because 2026 is an election year. And nobody's going to get shit. You know why? Because if these Democrats were really intended on giving black people reparations, black people would have had their reparations long before the borders opened up. And oddly enough, the city of San Francisco don't have the money to give black people reparations. So the mayor's just flat out lying about that. But mind you, I typed in Google, San Francisco gives welfare to illegal aliens, or to immigrants, because that's what they call the illegal aliens, immigrants, right? And AI says, yes, San Francisco offers various forms of public assistance, including cash aid, CAAP, and CAPI, food assistance, CalFresh, and health coverage, Medi-Cal, to eligible immigrants alongside specific funds like Stand Together Bay Area Fund for emergency support, though eligibility depends on immigration status, age, disability, and income for federal state programs, while local initiatives target those impacted by immigration enforcement. So in other words, the mayor of San Francisco is offering $5 million to every black resident, which they will not get because they passed the shit back in 2017 and nobody got nothing. Meanwhile, they got all these millions of dollars to give to the illegals, though. The Democrat Party is the party of scum. I don't give a fuck what you got to say about Trump or the Republicans. This is scumbaggery at its best. And for any black person out there that still supports the Democrat Party, you either have to be completely blind to this fact, completely ignorant of this fact, willfully ignorant of this fact, or slow. Because you cannot be of a conscious, sound mind and not see the problem here. The Democrat Party is the party of scum. They are the party of foreign infiltration, and they couldn't give two shits less about black people. They just use you as political pawns. So, the Democrat Party, of course, big support for the Somalis. They all mad at Trump because, or they're all mad at Nick Shirley for exposing the fraud, which is fraud that they're desperately trying to cover up. But the Epoch Times reported about a couple weeks ago, DOJ has charged nearly 100 people in Minnesota fraud scandal, 85 of Somali descent. And this fraud scandal was the food stamp fraud scandal. Now we're on to the daycare fraud scandal, which they're desperately trying to cover up. But there will be more. Elon Musk confirms the full force of Doge is being thrust against Minnesota's Somali fraud and all care centers nationwide. HHS, Health Human Services Doge, is now demanding receipts and evidence to release any funding to care centers. Right, they're not going to just give money out just because you're documented as a care center. Now you have to prove that you're actually a care center. Because the Somalis were documenting their care centers as care centers, but they were not operating. So they were getting all this grant money to operate, and they were keeping it all for themselves, essentially stealing. And it was billions of dollars. And any American trying to defend that shit, you are scum, and you should go back to Somalia with their ass. That's the way I feel about it. Elon Musk says this straightforward proof of work requirement, which is trivial for any legitimate organization to provide, is basic common sense and will have a very positive effect regarding fraud. Right. And that positive effect is nobody's going to be able to open up fake daycares and collect millions of dollars in federal funding. It ain't going to happen. So CBS is reporting that 2,000 federal agents are being deployed to Minnesota to begin a 30-day surge and federal crackdown on immigration and fraud. I think the Somalis in Minnesota have officially reached the find out stage, hence why Tim Walz is dropping out of the governor's race. Yes, and the find out stage would be stage 2 of fuck around and find out. So the Somalis have thoroughly fucked around. And now they're about to find out. Elon Musk demands the immediate arrest of Somali UN ambassador Abukar Dahir Osman after it was exposed he was an Ohio healthcare administrator involved in massive fraud, and he's currently the head of the UN Security Council. Fire him and leave the UN. So Trump has actually recently been talking about completely pulling out of the UN and being like Russia, because Russia ain't in the UN. And also defunding the World Health Organization, not giving funds to the World Health Organization. He has cut funding severely, but now he's going to completely pull out of it, and he just shut down their attempt to bring him into a treaty, a World Health Organization pandemic treaty. So when they try to pull another mass murder operation like COVID, America is not going to play ball. But for the Somali fraud, and it seems like all these Somalis, that's what they do. They get into position and they start stealing money. This motherfucker needs to go to jail. But this is what the liberals and the lefties and the defenders of the fraud are hanging their hats on. Minnesota investigators say child care centers accused of fraud are operating normally. Now, do you guys tell me what's wrong with this headline? I'll read it again for those of you who may not be able to see it. I'll read it again. The headline reads, Minnesota investigators say child care centers accused of fraud are operating normally. Now, somebody in the chat, whether you're on Rumble or YouTube, somebody in the chat, please tell me what's wrong with this headline. Don't worry, I'll wait. Remember, this is what the liberals are hanging their hats on to defend the fraudsters. They hate Trump and they hate America so much they'll rather have foreigners over here stealing their tax money. Bunch of goddamn idiots. Well, since there's such a long delay, I'll just go ahead and say it. What's wrong with this headline is it's Minnesota investigators. And if the governor is sanctioning this, then everybody under the governor is now a suspect in turning a blind eye to this situation at best. So, of course, the Minnesota investigators are going to say they're operating normally, because if they were committing fraud, that would reflect poorly on the Minnesota investigators, because that would mean this fraud was going on for years right under their noses, which would then make them suspicious of either being complicit in it, profiting from it, or simply turning a blind eye and being in dereliction of their duty. So they have to pretend that there's nothing wrong to make themselves look good. So you have the local investigators, and I'm pretty sure half of those motherfuckers are Somalis themselves, saying there's nothing wrong, but the feds are saying there's big fraud. Who are you going to believe? The government in the city that's allowing this fraud, or the feds, who are an outside entity and they are being ran by somebody who actually believes in law and order? So, of course, the Minnesota investigators are going to act like ain't nothing wrong. Of course they're going to. Why wouldn't they? It's to their benefit. They benefit from this lie because it makes them look good. Yes, we did our job. Nothing to see here. They're covering it up because they're covering their asses. But the feds are telling a totally different story. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the last big conservative to flip on Trump, started playing the Trump's involved with the Epstein situation along with the Democrats. And she left Congress and said, doing all that big talking, mad at Trump for, not doing what he said he was going to do. Remember, that was her chant, right? Oh, Trump didn't do what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to release the files. He should release the files. And guess what? The files got released. They were heavily redacted, but they're very easy to unredact. Can't do it from your phone, but you can do it from a computer. Pull up the Epstein files, copy and paste the files into a different program, and the redactions disappear. Right, lies that bind. We have investigated ourselves and found ourselves to be honest. Right, exactly. That's what's going on with the Minnesota. The Minnesota investigators are a goddamn joke. And if that's what you're going to hang your hat on to defend the Somali fraud, you're just as much of a joke. The joke's on you. You're the butt of the joke. Honestly. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene, mad at Trump for not doing what he said he was going to do. And guess what? She said she was going to release the names of men in the Epstein files. And guess what? Today was Marjorie Taylor Greene's last day, and she failed to read aloud the names of the men in the Epstein files as she had promised. Goddamn hypocrite. 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 However you want to say it. Hypocrite. Jezebel. Should have kept your fucking mouth shut. You would have still had your job. You would have still had your respect. And you wouldn't look like a goddamn idiot. Mad at Trump because he ain't do what he said he was going to do. And then she turns around and not does what she said she was going to do. Crazy. Fucking nuts. Now you see why Trump said what he said about her, because she was a strong advocate of Trump's for a long time. But then when it was time to flip that infiltrator switch and join forces with the Democrats, at the same time they were trying to smear Trump and make it seem like he was down with Epstein, which is an absolute fucking lie. A lie from the pits of hell. She flipped on him. And she was used as the Republican plant to lend credibility to the lie so the fake news can say, even Trump advocate Marjorie Taylor Greene says Trump is in the Epstein file, so it must be true. That's how the infiltrator plays it. And she turned out to be a fucking fraud and a liar herself. Trump was right. This is why I fucks with Trump. And even when I see people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who were once big Trump supporters, turn on Trump, I choose Trump. I stick with Trump. I side with Trump. Because I've seen the whole entire establishment turn against this man for 10 fucking years after kissing his ass for 30 years prior. And I've seen everything he's done thus far in the face of the overwhelming opposition that he's had to deal with, and I respect it. I can't rock with people like this. They two-faced it. Can't rock with them. And speaking of them trying to frame Trump with the Epstein thing, how about this one? This is from the Department of Justice. The FBI has confirmed this alleged letter from Jeffrey Epstein to Larry Nassar is fake. The fake letter was received by the jail and flagged for the FBI at the time. The FBI made this conclusion based on the following facts. The writing does not appear to match Jeffrey Epstein's. The letter was postmarked 3 days after Epstein's death out of Northern Virginia when he was in jail in New York. The return address did not list the jail where Epstein was held and did not include his inmate number, which is required for outgoing mail. This fake letter serves as a reminder that just because a document is released by the Department of Justice does not make the allegations or claims within the document factual. Nevertheless, the DOJ will continue to release all material required by law. Now, what the DOJ means by saying just because it's in a document that they released does not make the allegations and the claims in the document factual means that all that talk that the pedophiles was doing about Trump and the Epstein files, because that's the only time Trump's name is mentioned in the Epstein files, when the pedophiles are talking amongst each other about Trump, doesn't make the shit they're saying true. In other words, why the fuck would you believe pedophiles? And if you believe the shit those pedophiles were saying in the Epstein documents about Trump, then you really got to ask yourself, like, why would I put my trust in a pedophile before I put my trust in the man that sacrificed 75% of his wealth, put his life and his good name on the line, became the biggest villain in American media from being America's sweetheart, doesn't collect a salary in the face of all of this, and seems to have America's best interest at heart? Why the fuck would I side with pedophiles instead of seeing the truth for what it is? Because them pedophiles didn't sacrifice shit but somebody else's kids. That's all they ever sacrificed. And this is that fake ass letter right here. Fake ass shit. Bunch of fake ass shit. That's all they got on Trump, is a bunch of fake ass shit. Now, this is some vaccine stuff. I guess we could skip over this. Yeah, we'll skip over the vaccine stuff. But about the World Health Organization treaty, the pandemic agreement. This is what I was talking about right here. In July 2025, the Trump administration officially rejected amendments to the international health regulations and confirmed the United States would not participate in the separate pandemic agreement or treaty. The administration cited concerns about U.S. sovereignty and potential overreach by the World Health Organization. In other words, Trump said, we're not playing ball with you one world government assholes. Key actions and context. Executive order to withdraw from the World Health Organization. Upon returning to office in January 2025, Trump signed an executive order to initiate the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization, a process that takes 1 year. Well, we're at that threshold now, aren't we? This withdrawal meant the U.S. did not participate in the final negotiations or adoption of the new pandemic agreement in May 2025. So was I right or was I right? Trump ain't fucking with them. So anybody that's saying Trump is down with that shit is a goddamn liar. They're lying. They are lying. And this is all they can do with Trump, is lie. That's all they can do, is lie on him. Lie on him and misconstrue and misinterpret what he says and what he does. And again, the people that are mad at him about the vaccine don't understand how the vaccine laws work in America. When it comes to proper testing, they don't understand. If they understood, they would be able to piece it together, but they simply don't. And it's not a knock against them. It just means they haven't done the research that I've done. This is why I know and they don't. When it comes to the Israel business, they're neglecting the fact that Israel did 9/11 and are perfectly capable of pulling off another one or several. So Trump's being held hostage, but at the same time, he's winding down his support for Israel while Israel's enemies are building up their arsenals to attack Israel. And this Maduro thing plays right into that because it's a favor for a favor. Russia and China fell back and let Trump move in on Venezuela, which means Trump is going to fall back and let Russia and China move in on Israel. You mark my words. That's what's going to happen. So let's continue on. Rejection of International Health Regulations Amendment. On July 18th, 2025, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the State Department issued a joint statement formally rejecting the IHR amendments that were adopted by the World Health Assembly in 2024. Stated reasons for rejection: Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that amendments and the proposed treaty risked unwarranted interference with our national sovereign right to make health policy and failed to address concerns about the World Health Organization's susceptibility to political influence, notably by China or from China. The World Health Organization response. Excuse me. World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus expressed regret over the decision, stating that the IHR amendments are clear about member states' sovereignty and do not override national laws or mandate actions like lockdowns. Well, we don't give a fuck what you say, Tedros. You and the rest of your group can play that game. America's not playing your game, and that's that. So shout out to Trump for shutting that bullshit down. Impact. The U.S. withdrawal and rejection mean it is not bound by the provisions of either the IHR amendments or the new pandemic agreement. The actions also led to a pause in U.S. funding and a halt in collaboration between U.S. agencies like the CDC and the World Health Organization. So, ties to these one world organizations are being cut. This is all part of NASARA, returning to full American sovereignty under constitutional law. This is why all of this is happening. And this is why the mainstream media that wants to keep us tied to these international one world government bodies and social media and their agents, this is why they're so desperately trying to smear Trump. This is why they're running this smear campaign against Trump supporters, conservatives as a whole, because they want to maintain this international influence. Because this is the result of bought and paid for politicians. They're bought and paid for in order to use their position in government to bring America under the one world government. But Trump hasn't been bought off. He's being held hostage to a degree with the Israeli terror threat here in America because he doesn't want American citizens to get blown up in their apartment buildings by Israeli Mossad, like 9/11, like they did on 9/11 with those office buildings, right? But he is not bought and paid for by these international bodies, so he doesn't have to comply with that shit. And because we have the most powerful military in the world, there's no other military force out there that has the power to make him do it. He's the big bully on the block, so he's saying, fuck you. What are you going to do about it? And guess what they're doing about it? Not a damn thing but crying. Now, speaking of crying, how about all these liberals crying about Maduro? All the anti-Trump, pro-Maduro protests. These are the same dumbass liberals that were just out there a couple months ago, last summer, talking about no kings. But now they support a third world dictator. Bunch of goddamn idiots. But like I said, we'll never understand their way of thinking because we're conscious minds trying to understand the unconscious minds. We're actual player characters in the game trying to understand the mentality of the programmed NPC. But there is no mentality. It's just programming. So as long as we understand the programming, we know why they believe the stupid shit they believe. And that's just what it is. New Mexico officials urge employers to require vaccinations. Now, this is an old article from 2021, but I'm bringing this up to remind you guys that the same liberals that wanted to force vaccinate you are the same ones that are trying to tell you what's good for America right now because they want you to be mad at Trump over Maduro. They want to keep the drug trafficking going because they profit from it too. And these are the same assholes that wanted you to lose your job for not participating in their medical experiment. It was the Democrats. You see, this goes back to Operation Warp Speed. The Democrats had to resort to asking private businesses to make this their private business policy in order to force more people to take that shot. Because they did not have the governmental or legislative authority to pass any mandates. So when people say, oh, it was Trump with the vaccines and Trump with the no. It was the Democrats and their influence on private businesses by way of the local departments of labor that forced these businesses to commit the crime of practicing medicine without a license. It was all the Democrats doing that shit. And Santa Fe, New Mexico, just so you know, cartel territory. Cartel territory. Oh, shout out to Lies That Bind. Lies That Bind says, Citizen Man, I enjoyed your talk on Monday night while you were driving. The sound quality was strong and clear. Thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe I'm too used to hearing myself on the microphone. So, because it wasn't crisp, like studio crisp, I was displeased, I guess. But anyway, New Mexico's Democratic governor. This is who forced the vaccine on you, ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats. And dozens of other elected officials are urging the state's business community to require that employees be vaccinated against COVID-19 or alternatively undergo regular testing. See, it was the Democrats. Those steps are necessary to stop the current increased spread of the coronavirus as infections increase, according to the letter released Friday and sent to employers and business groups. The 28 signers include Democratic Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, U.S. Senators Ben Ray Lujan and Martin Heinrich, and U.S. Representatives Teresa Ledger Fernandez, and Melanie Stansbury, but not U.S. Representative Yvette Harrell, the congressional delegation's sole Republican member. You see that shit right there? So it was all the Democrats forcing your employers to give you that, to force you to take that fucking vaccine. It wasn't Trump. It wasn't Trump, you lying motherfuckers. It wasn't Trump. But we already knew this. But there's too many lying assholes out there that would tell you, oh, it was Trump with the vaccine. The vaccine would have been put out regardless of Operation Warp Speed. Whether Trump did Operation Warp Speed or not, they were going to put the fucking vaccine out. The only difference is without Operation Warp Speed, they weren't going to put it out till 2023. And that means businesses would have stayed shut down for those years. Schools would have stayed shut down for those years. Your kids would have become incredibly dumb. Everybody would have been masked up to where their bodies would have been so toxic they would have been shitting radioactive material. Their faces would have been broken out with sores and shit. Their gums and their teeth would have rotted away because they're on a daily basis for hours on end inhaling their own fucking excrement. It's like putting a bucket of shit over your head. And then by the time they rolled out the vaccine in 2023, it would have been 3 years. They would have claimed it was properly tested. Then would have came the mandates and everybody would have been shot up and died because our bodies and our health would have been so deteriorated from the forced masking. So Operation Warp Speed averted all of that stupid shit. But again, people don't understand how the game works. They only understand the surface level and what tidbits they can gather on social media. But this bitch right here, Melanie Stansbury, the reason why I'm showing you this and reminding you of this, of these assholes that try to force that shot on you, that biological weapon on you, is because these are the same fucking assholes trying to tell you Trump is wrong about Venezuela. These are the same scumbags trying to convince you that what Trump did was a bad thing, when it was the one thing that most American citizens were complaining about. When we were fighting all those fucking wars in the Middle East, the majority of Americans were saying, why the hell is our military members fighting and dying all the way over there when those people ain't did shit to us, and we got these fucking cartels over here dumping tons of dope into our country, murdering American citizens. In Mexico, in some places, it's not even so, it's so unsafe that if you're an American, they tell you don't leave the hotel at night. There's countries right here in the Western Hemisphere that Americans can't safely travel to because of these fucking cartels. And now Trump is doing something about it. And these same assholes that try to force that fucking needle in your arm and made you and your mama and them lose y'all fucking jobs because you ain't want to take that goddamn needle in your arm. Now they're trying to fucking tell you that Trump is wrong about Venezuela. Now they want to pretend to have some fucking moral fiber. when they're nothing but lying scumbags. And this is why I support Trump, and I don't give a fuck what nobody has to say. Because the people that are telling you Trump is bad are the same motherfuckers that try to stick that fucking needle in your goddamn arm. Shit, too much Red Bull. Damn it. This video is not going to be monetized. I'm cussing too much. Whew. It's a lot. And it's frustrating because I'm thinking back 5 years ago, 4 years ago, with these assholes trying to force that bioweapon on us. And now I'm looking at these same fucking assholes today pretend like they know what's moral and what's right for America. And I'm watching my fellow Americans buy into that stupid shit. And it pisses me to fuck off because by now we should know better. We should know who the fuck our enemies are, and we should know not to believe a goddamn word they say. This bitch right here, Melanie Stansbury. Look at this stupid shit. Representative Melanie Stansbury. The White House is confirming U.S. military operations in Venezuela tonight. Let us be clear. These strikes are illegal. The president does not have the authority to declare war or undertake large-scale military operations without Congress. Congress must act to rein him in immediately. You hear that stupid shit? But then you rewind 4 years ago, and she was down with some illegal shit, which was aimed at we, the American people. But now all of a sudden, she wants to tell us what the fuck is legal and what's illegal. Get the fuck out of here. That's why Trump should have leveled Venezuela. He should have bombed all of them motherfuckers. And then she lies and says large-scale military operation. It wasn't large-scale. It lasted all but 45 minutes and took one small squad from Delta Force and a couple of fireworks. This is why all the people that are telling you what Trump did in Venezuela was a bad thing. This is why you have to reject that bullshit, because it's bullshit from the same bullshitters that's been bullshitting you for the last 10 years. And if after 10 years of being bullshitted, you don't know who's bullshitting you or not by now, something's wrong. You haven't been paying attention. So the same scumbags that try to force your employer to force you to take a bioweapon are the same scumbags now trying to tell us what's legal and what's not. The same scumbags that wanted to open the fucking borders and letting all the goddamn illegals, now they want to tell you what's legal and what's not legal. When I tell you, this is why when I started with the San Francisco mayor, I started out, the first thing I said was, these Democrats are a bunch of fucking scumbags. They're scumbags. And I hope Trump goes into Colombia and snatches that motherfucker. And I hope he goes to Cuba and snatches that motherfucker. And I hope he goes to Mexico and bombs those motherfuckers and continues on until the Western Hemisphere is safe for anybody to travel at any time. You know what gives the Mexican drug cartels so much power? Their connects. The people who ship the dope to them. And guess who the connects are? Colombia produces the shit. Venezuela transports the shit. That's how it goes. Brazil has already been cleared out. They just had a big ass war between the police and the gangs in the favelas over in Brazil, and over 100 people, police and gang members, got killed in that shootout. Go look it up. Go look it up. It just happened a few months ago. So Brazil is clear. Brazil is an ally now. Guyana is an ally. But Colombia and Venezuela are in the crosshairs. Because Colombia was producing all the dope, and Venezuela and Cuba were helping to ship the dope. And these same Democrats that were trying to shoot you up with dope 4 years ago are now trying to tell you leave the dope dealers alone because it's unjust and immoral. Get the fuck out of here. And y'all hit the Cash App and support the show, man. I'm gonna need some aspirin after this or something, man. This shit done gave myself a damn headache. All right, that's Israel shit. We could skip that. Fuck all of that. So the superseding indictment for Nicolas Maduro, I believe, is going to be about the election fraud. This was a post from 2020 from Sidney Powell, and it said, this is the actual results of the election. People in Germany saw this before Dominion servers were seized. And the seizure of the Dominion servers was by the U.S. Marine Special Forces, Recon Marines in Frankfurt, Germany in 2020. I think it was December of 2020. And then they went to Barcelona and did the same thing. So the military already knew who won the election, and they knew who committed the fraud and where it was happening at. This will probably get removed, so share as much as possible. The fraud is massive. Shame on these people. And Trump got 200. Yeah, this is when Trump had 270 electoral votes. So this was the actual 2020 election results. But thanks to Venezuela and Dominion voting machines, Dominion voting systems, Biden got the win. So Trump got 410 and Biden got 128. That was the actual vote count. It's not just the Somalis in Minnesota. The Democrats opened up our nation to anyone who would come here and vote for them in exchange for our tax dollars. And that's literally what they try to do with the illegals. I don't know if you guys can read that if it's not too small, but I'll just continue reading it to you. They use shell companies to funnel public money to the immigrants. You see, they're calling them immigrants. They're not immigrants, they're illegals. Meaning we are slaves that fund the people replacing us. This is why the Democrats so desperately don't want voter ID, because they are wittingly engaged in a scheme to let the illegals vote, which allows them to stay in power, which allows them to continue to steal our tax dollars, and not only steal our tax dollars, but keep the borders open and facilitate the dope and the human trafficking. It's all one giant racket, and we, the people, are the suckers. Well, suckers no more, because with Maduro's capture, shit's about to get real funky, and 2026 is going to be lit. You don't believe me? Well, this is slide 32, probably the most important slide of the entire show. Today is January 1st, 2026. This is CIA analyst Michael Schur, PhD, and he confirms, and this is Michael Schur on, I think, what does that say? GBN. He was doing an interview, and Donald Trump posted this. And this is another reason why I believe that the superseding indictment for Maduro has to do with the election fraud. But do you believe votes were manipulated, changed electronically in favor of Joe Biden? And if so, how was it done? The Central Intelligence Agency, so this is Michael Schur's, what's his name? Yeah. Michael Schur. This is Michael Schur's response. The Central Intelligence Agency toppled the United States government on November 3rd, 2020, live on national TV. A report, Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000 Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden. 941,000 Trump votes deleted. States using Dominion voting systems switched 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden. Was it this when Jack Smith testified and said that the candidate who ran for the presidency of the United States, Donald Trump, did not have a First Amendment right to say the 2020 election was stolen? Yep, and that's why they started censoring everybody. You remember that shit? After the 2020 election, anything regarding election fraud, they censored it and called it misinformation. Y'all remember that shit? Yeah, that's why. Because the fraud was so massive, it was painfully obvious, and they tried desperately to cover it up. And in a lot of cases, they succeeded. Now, this headline here was one that I posted on my community tab, and it says, And it's from The Conversation, and it says, were U.S. actions in Venezuela legal under international law? An expert explains. And of course, the expert goes on to explain that Trump's actions were illegal under international law. But what the expert failed to explain was how warfare works. When you have a foreign country committing open acts of war against your country, you have a right to retaliate in whatever way you see fit. That's how it works. But of course, the same experts that were telling you the vaccine was safe and effective, the same experts that were telling you COVID was real and people were dying in the hospital from it when they were being murdered, those experts, the same experts that desperately lie to try to tell you the earth is round, those experts. Now they're trying to tell you what the U.S. president can and can't do in a time of declared war. We are in a state of declared war, have been so since 9/11. That declaration has never concluded. So we are still in a state of declared war, and Trump still has the full authority as the commander in chief. And any hostile nation committing open acts of war against our country, like, I don't know, usurping our election, flooding our country with dope, and committing human trafficking in and out of our borders, and then sending over gang members to terrorize American citizens and set up drug distribution operations. Yeah, we have a right to bomb your ass, and we're gonna fucking bomb you. And they're lucky that all Trump did was bomb a few sites and then sent in Delta Force to snatch and grab Maduro and his wife, because it could have been a lot worse. And I think Maduro actually made a deal to allow Trump to come get him, because Trump was gonna come get him one way or another. And we'll get to that in the cartel connections. Of course, here's Kamala Harris, another scumbag Democrat. Donald Trump's actions in Venezuela did not make America safer, stronger, or more affordable. That Maduro is a brutal, illegitimate dictator does not change the fact that this action was both unlawful and unwise. We've seen this movie before: wars for regime change or oil that are sold as strength but turn into chaos, and American families pay the price. The American people do not want this, and they are tired of being lied to. Well, Kamala, the American people did not want you, and they're tired of being lied to by you, Kamala Harris, or rubber mask Kamala. People are sick of you people, okay? They're sick of you people, because it was under your administration with Biden that America became less safe, weaker, with the open borders and Tren de Aragua and all that shit, and less affordable with the skyrocketing food and gas prices because of the skyrocketing taxes. Yeah, Kamala. But like I said, when it's these assholes telling you that what Trump did is wrong, that means what Trump did was 100% right and he should have done more. That's what that means to me. I don't know, Antara. I don't know how that's going to play out. Now, Joey Manarino kind of sort of got it right here. He says, no one cares if this was for oil or not. No one cares if Congress approves this or not. No one cares at all. Trump freed 29 million people and changed the destiny of Latin America before most of the people bitching and moaning even woke up and brushed their teeth. This mission was perfectly executed. And what Joey means when he says Trump changed the destiny of Latin America, when you take down the biggest government-sanctioned narco state, on the continent of South America. Oh, got a lot of gas from this Red Bull. That means that the Colombian producers who are producing the cocaine will have a very difficult time now getting that cocaine out of Colombia and distributed to the rest of the world, which means the drug supply around the Western world is going to slowly start to dry up. If you really want to end the war on drugs and end the drug epidemic and put all the drug dealers out of business, you don't go lock up the drug dealers, because as long as there's still that supply chain, there'll be another dealer to fill his shoes in no time. But if you hit it at the source and you cut off the supply chain, the markets dry up. So no matter how bad these dealers want to sell the dope, there will be no dope. So Trump changed the destiny of Latin America because Latin America now has a golden opportunity to become independent sovereign states governed by the people of each one of those nations rather than cartel controlled territory with puppet governments that work for the cartels. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Excuse me. Russia and China. This is where it gets fun. This is the fun part. Russia invested $6 billion to shield Maduro with advanced weapons and air defenses. U.S. strikes reportedly erased the package near Caracas and LaGuardia. I believe Putin gave Trump some targets to bomb to make it look like, make it look more serious than it was. Or Putin gave Maduro those weapons so Putin would know where those weapons would be staged and set up so that intel could then be forwarded to Trump, and now we know where to bomb. So they get bombed. Now, people are saying Trump killed Venezuelan citizens and all that, but we don't know what happened. We don't know who died. And it's really hard to tell. So I'll be honest. I really don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Because if the Venezuelan people did not allow their country to become a narco state, Trump wouldn't have had to drop any goddamn bombs there anyway. And all those armed civilians that they were showing on social media taken to the streets in support of Maduro, where were those armed civilians taken to the streets against the cartels? Where were they? Oh, that's right. Busy working for the cartels. Yeah. How about that one? China says it cannot accept any country acting as a world judge or the world's policeman. Yeah, China says that, but China hasn't done shit about it. And guess what? They're not going to do shit about it. They're not going to do anything about it. They're just going to talk and talk and talk, but they're not going to do anything. You know why? Because China is in agreement with Trump, because China's got their own plans with Russia and the BRICS nations. And guess what? How about this one? So Trump seized all the oil from Venezuela, right? Everybody's mad about it. But guess who's coming to buy the oil? BRICS nations. There's currently a fleet of 16 oil tankers from all different BRICS nations, including Russia and China, headed to Venezuela because Trump made the deal with them and he's going to sell them the oil. And part of the reason why Russia and China allowed Trump to do what he did and seize the Venezuelan oil was because Maduro was charging them a higher price for the oil, and Trump offered them a cheaper price for the oil. Because that was the original plan anyway, had Maduro not stolen the election in 2013. If the rightful president elected by the people of Venezuela had taken office, he had a pre-written agreement with Donald Trump to sell the Venezuelan oil to America, who was then going to refine it at the Texas oil refineries and sell that diesel and gasoline to Russia and China. But because Trump had to seize the oil from Maduro because Maduro took over and basically stole the oil and started selling it at a higher rate, Trump said, hey, Russia and China, guess what? I got something for you. I'll get you that oil for cheaper. And Russia and China was like, well, okay. So Trump killed 3 birds with 1 stone, took out one of the biggest narco states in the Western Hemisphere, and got China and Russia a better deal on that Venezuelan crude. Who's mad? Why are you mad? I'm not mad. I don't care. America doesn't need Venezuela's oil. So all that talk you heard on social media about, oh, Trump went into Venezuela because they got the biggest oil reserves, and blah, blah, fucking blah. You know where the money from the oil sales is going? It's going back to the Venezuelan people. That's the part of the story they're not going to tell you. So Trump seized the Venezuelan oil, and instead of Maduro selling it and keeping all the money for himself, Trump's going to sell it and give it back to the Venezuelan people because that's their oil. That's their money. How about that one? So yeah, Trump went in there for the fucking oil to give the proceeds from that oil back to the people. America doesn't need Venezuelan oil. We don't. But you see, people don't understand how the world works on a geopolitical level. So they don't get it. All they hear is war, oil, and they think what Bush did, what Obama did. Donald Trump is not George Bush, and Donald Trump is not Obama. In case you haven't noticed, George Bush and Barack Obama did not get a fraction of a fraction of the hate that Trump has gotten over the last 10 years. So he must be doing something right. Because the same media that advocates for policies that work against we, the American people, they were in big support of George Bush and Barack Obama. And what George Bush and Barack Obama did was unwarranted, and it was in support of keeping up the fiat banking system. What Trump did was in support of returning the wealth of Venezuela back to the Venezuelan people and stopping the flow of narco gangs and dope into our country. So what the fuck are you mad about? What are you mad about? Oh, that's right. You're mad because you don't know what the fuck's going on. You think you know because you're listening to all these idiots on the internet that couldn't find their ass with both hands or fight their way out of a wet paper bag, but they know so much about what's going on in the fucking world. When in reality, they don't know shit. They're just repeating what they heard because it sounds nice. And you know how you know they don't know shit? Because if you ask them, just ask them one simple question, and this will tell you all you need to know about their geopolitical knowledge. Is Trump an ally or an enemy of Russia and China? And if they say enemy, that means they're bought into the propaganda. They don't know what's going on. Because if Trump and Russia and China were enemies, this Venezuela thing would have started something. Because China and Russia combined has enough military power to take out the United States. They do. Now, individually, we'll put up a hell of a fight and we have a chance of beating each one of them individually, but it will be a Pyrrhic victory. We'll suffer many losses, but we will prevail. But Russia and China combined, America can't fuck with. But Russia and China are open allies and they're secret allies with Trump because Trump wants to help the BRICS nations compete with the World Bank and the IMF. And he wants to transition the control of international trade to the BRICS and the World Bank and the IMF because they are going to reintroduce the gold-backed currencies and the digital gold-backed currencies in the quantum financial system, which will create fair trade for everyone, which is one of Trump's biggest mantras. He's been saying that since as long as he's been on camera. The trade deals are bad. We need fair trade deals. And when he says fair trade deals, he means mutually beneficial trade deals. And the quantum financial system is what's going to make that happen. Because currently the fiat government, the fiat currency system that we have is squeezing out poorer nations and allowing stronger nations to exploit those poorer nations. But with the quantum financial system and precious metals backed currency and the BRICS Development Bank, those poor nations will then be able to capitalize on their own resources rather than depend on foreign colonizers coming in and exploiting their resources. That's what it's about. It ain't about no fucking oil. It ain't about Trump just wanting power. It ain't about nothing that these vaccine mandate assholes are trying to tell you. Just go back through the history books. Take note of all the prominent people, politicians, celebrities, whoever, that are telling you what Trump did in Venezuela was bad, and go back to 2020 and 2021 and see what they were saying about the vaccine. Go ahead. Go do that. That's your homework. That's your homework. And then you'll see why Citizen Man fuck with Trump to this day. The actual Venezuelan people, the ones who lived under Maduro's boot, a whole lot of them are celebrating. But you, sitting on your couch eating your DoorDash, are pissed off. Last week, you were mad at Nick Shirley for exposing corruption. This week, you are mad about an administration that doesn't even govern you. You rotate outrage like it's a subscription service. Pick a standard or admit you don't have one. Facts. Alex Jones says, Intel experts believe Cuban intelligence may have been holding Nicolas Maduro hostage and that President Trump's daring raid was really a rescue mission so that Maduro and his wife could turn state's evidence against the Democrat deep state for election fraud, massive money laundering, and drug trafficking. Now, this is a very interesting thought. And regardless of how you may feel about Alex Jones, this is an interesting thought. And it led me to think, what the fuck does Cuba have to do with Venezuela? But then I remembered there were Cuban elements and Cuban military elements in Venezuela. And why would the Cubans be holding Maduro hostage? Well, if Trump was constantly threatening Venezuela with the military, with the naval blockades and whatnot, right? Maduro might have been getting cold feet and saying, you know what? It's probably best if I turn myself in. The jig is up. America's coming at us and ain't nothing we can do about it. And the Cubans said, nah, Maduro, you're going to keep that dope flowing. You're going to keep sending them boats out. So the boats kept going out. Shout out to the civics professor, Amir Bey. He says, keep cooking, my brother. Appreciate you, Amir Bey. Appreciate that support. So we are at 50. Yeah, we're at $50. So we halfway to the $100 mark, y'all. Let's keep it going. Keep it going. You might get the whole indictment tonight. I kind of do want to read it too. I really do. But anyway, it's possible that the Cubans could have been forcing Maduro to do this, and Maduro wanted to turn himself in so he can save his own neck by snitching on everybody. And if Maduro presided over Venezuela at the time Dominion voting systems was flipping Trump votes to Biden votes in order for the borders to be open, to the United States borders to be open, then that means Maduro was obviously in league with certain specific American politicians. He had to have been. And if that's the case, well, we're going to probably start to see those arrests that we've been hoping to see. And boy, oh boy, that's going to make 2026 a lit year. But don't look for it on the mainstream media, because you probably won't hear much about it on the mainstream media. But you will hear about it. You will hear about it over here on Citizen Man. Shout out to my brother Antara. He says, for the info war, appreciate you, Antara. We're at 55, y'all. We're counting up. 55. Oh, shit. We're going to start the year off right. Let's see if we can do it, man. God damn it. So, what this indicates to me is Cuban involvement. Cuban involvement and Maduro possibly snitching. And I think he will snitch because he ain't no gangster. He's a politician. He just happens to be a politician that run with gangsters. CNN halts show as Trump slams Claudia Sheinbaum as he claims the cartels are running Mexico. So when Trump talks about the cartels, he's not only talking about the Mexican drug cartels, but he's talking about the cartels worldwide, all throughout the Western world, because the cartels being supplied by the Central American cartels being supplied by the South American cartels is how the chain works. And the Mexican cartels are the main distributors because they have direct access to the American drug market, which is very profitable and very, very lucrative. But without that South American supply chain, those cartels don't have product to sell, which means they will run out of money very quickly. And they've had free reign to operate in Mexico, not only because the Mexican politicians and those other South American politicians are just plain old corrupt, but a lot of times these cartels would force them to work for them. They have a saying where they would approach somebody and make them an offer and say, hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars to facilitate our operation. And that politician or public official has a choice. And the choice is silver or lead. In other words, they was on some get down or lay down type shit. Silver or lead. Meaning you take the money or we kill you. So a lot of these politicians, they capitulate because the cartels do have that kind of firepower. And unfortunately, in politics, all around the world, no matter where you are, the man in charge, the man who gets to be in charge is the man with the most killers on his payroll. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's always been. And right now, Trump is the man in charge of the Western world because he's got the most killers on his payroll. But the cartels have their firepower, they have their force, and they use it quite regularly. There's no, like, we've lost count of how many politicians running for office trying to fight the drug cartels died before their campaigns, even before election day even came around. You know what I'm saying? So, and CNN shutting down the interview, that's pretty telling of whose side they're on and who they're operating with. Shout out to Elsine. She says, great show. Thank you. Let's reach 100. Oh, man, we are at 60. We are counting up, baby. Counting up. Let's get it. So Mexico News Daily says Sheinbaum condemns U.S. military intervention in Venezuela. Trump says something's going to have to be done with Mexico. Yeah, so Sheinbaum, the cartel president of Mexico, she's also siding with the crooked-ass Democrats that wanted to stick that needle in your arm or you can't eat. You can't buy or sell. You can't go to work. She's siding with the Democrats telling us Trump bad. Yeah, you know why Trump bad? Because her cartel friends can't make no money now. They fucked up in the game. Shout out to Chess Piece with the Cash App. He says, Happy New Year, flat motherfucking power. Appreciate you, Chess Piece. We're at 70. Of course, Sheinbaum is going to condemn Trump. I'm telling you, when you listen to these people that are mad about what Trump did in Venezuela, this is where that propaganda and that messaging is coming from. It's drug cartel propaganda. And the Democratic Party is the American political wing of the drug cartels. So I looked up, since Cuba was brought up, right? I looked up the cartels in Cuba, or Cuba in the last 10 years. What's been happening in Cuba? Because we haven't been hearing much about Cuba since Trump's been in office, right? Not much at all. So I just did a quick Google search, and this is what I learned about, this is what it told me, I should say, about what's going on in Cuba. In the last decade, roughly 2015 to 2025, Cuba has faced a severe, deepening economic crisis. Let me see if I can pull this up in the big gallery and blow it up. What was that, slide 42? See, the big gallery, I have to use the small gallery because it puts the slides in order, but the big gallery gives me the zoom capability. Here we go. Have faced severe, deepening economic crisis marked by shortages, inflation, power outages, and declining living standards, prompting significant migration and social unrest. Despite early hopes from the U.S.-Cuba thaw under Obama, the economy deteriorated due to failed state policies, a poorly executed currency reform, reduced Venezuelan support, and the persistent U.S. embargo, leading to mass emigration and increased government crackdowns on dissent following major protests in 2021. So Cuba's kind of been going through the same thing Venezuela's been going through. Hell. Okay. So, economic crisis and shortages, deteriorating finances. Cuba experienced growing fiscal deficits, with revenues falling sharply as expenditures remained high. Product scarcity. Severe shortages of basic goods, food, and medicine became epidemic with declining investment and harvests. Energy failures. Power generation capacity significantly decreased, causing frequent blackouts. Currency woes. A poorly implemented currency reform in 2021 fueled hyperinflation. Social and political changes, mass exodus. A growing number of Cubans facing hardship have left the island, with emigration numbers surpassing the Muriel boat lift. Crackdowns on dissent following widespread protest in July of 2021 and March 2022. The government arbitrarily detained hundreds, suppressing dissent and free expression. Erosion of hope. Initial optimism from the U.S. Cuba opening in 2015 faded, replaced by despair, and economic conditions worsened. So Cuba's been fucked up. Kind of sounds like the cartel's been running it. Same shit's been happening in Mexico. Same shit's been happening in Venezuela. External factors. U.S. embargo. The long-standing U.S. embargo remained a significant constraint limiting trade and financial transactions, though many Cubans and analysts point to internal policy failures as primary drivers. Reduced support. Declining support from Venezuela exasperated Cuba's economic struggles. Key moments. 2015 to 2016, U.S. and Cuba restore relations, easing travel and financial ties. 2019 to 2022, economic deterioration accelerates, marked by increased deficits and declining GDP. July 2021, largest anti-government protests since the Cuban Revolution occurred, leading to mass arrests. 21 to 22, hyperinflation, power cuts, and shortages peak, driving migration. So Cuba has just been in steady decline over the last 10 years, just total collapse. But even under the U.S. embargoes, before Obama opened up, relations with Cuba in 2015, the Cuban people were poor, but they weren't doing this bad. But now it's a shithole. And of course, Miguel Diaz-Canel, that is the Cuban president. He looks like a scumbag. Ladies, if you were at the bar and this guy offered you to buy you a drink, like he approached you with that charming smile, and he's got the Antonio Banderas accent, and his voice is all deep. Hola, mamacita, may I buy you a drink? Would you trust this motherfucker? I just want to know. Because he looks like a creep to me. I don't know. His teeth are like 3 different colors. His smile looks kind of weaselish, like that used car salesman smile. He looks like a weasel. So Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez, Latin American, Spanish, whatever. Born April 20th, 1960, is a Cuban politician and engineer who has served as the 8th First Secretary of the Communist Party of Cuba since 2021, and as the 17th President of Cuba since 2019. In his capacity as First Secretary, he is the most powerful person in the Cuban government. Yeah, all the ladies are like, nah, see, I thought so. He looks like he'll slip some Diddy in your drink. He'll just Diddy it all up. Yes, you need to go to the bathroom. Yes, I watch your drink for you. I watch your drink, mamacita. I watch your drink. Yes, I keep you safe. I promise. You are safe with me, mamacita. Got the Antonio Banderas accent and shit, trying to be all smooth. Motherfucker, he looked too smooth. You know what I'm saying? Like when you meet somebody that's cool, smooth and shit, and their energy is real, is good energy. Like it's just a smooth, cool cat like that. Like there's dudes like that. And then there's the motherfuckers, the weasels that just seem too smooth. Like they got an answer for everything. And I don't know. I don't know. Just a fucking just weirdo vibes, man. Weirdo vibes. While traditional large scale, okay, so here's the next question that I asked Google: cartels in Cuba, right? Because after looking at the economic situation that's been happening to Cuba for the last 10 years, it and of course the weaselly president that they have, it seems as if, and the fact that there was Cubans in Venezuela, it seems as if there might be some cartel activity happening in Cuba, right? So I just randomly searched into Google cartels in Cuba. And wouldn't you know, this is what it told me. Excuse me. While traditional large scale Mexican or Cuban style drug cartels don't operate openly in Cuba, allegations and reports link Cuban officials and intelligence to major drug trafficking operations, particularly the Cartel of the Suns. Isn't that the same cartel that Venezuela is? That Venezuela, the Venezuelan government is a part of? Yep. Accusing Havana of facilitating routes and protecting operations for its own benefit and that of allies, while also noting Cuba's historical ties to U.S. organized crime and persistent corruption, especially under Batista. So the same cartel that runs Venezuela is basically running Cuba. So key points: Cartel of the Suns. U.S. officials and defectors claim the Cuban government, specifically intelligence and military figures, helps orchestrate drug flows from Venezuela to the U.S., using Cuba as a hub for logistics and protection, working with Venezuelan regime figures. Oh, very interesting. So Colombia is the producer. Venezuela is the port of export, is the export hub, and Cuba is basically the transitional hub. Cuban government involvement. Allegations suggest Cuban intelligence and diplomats are involved in these drug trafficking networks, with high-ranking officials linked to facilitating routes and protecting traffickers, per groups like the Center for a Free Cuba. Of course, corrupt politicians. That's who was shipping. Cartel of the Suns are the ones who were supplying Bill Clinton with all the tons of cocaine he was flying into Mena, Arkansas. Okay? So this goes way back and it goes all the way to the top. So with the capture of Maduro, this is going to be bigger than Epstein. Let's just say this is going to be bigger than fucking Epstein. Okay? Historical ties to U.S. crime. Before the revolution, U.S. mafia and other criminal groups used Cuba as a base for casinos, prostitution, and drug trafficking, a problem exasperated under the Batista regime. Marielitos, Cuban origin gangs in the U.S. have worked with American mafia and Colombian cartels to establish drug pipelines through their peak activity, although their peak activity was in the 1980s. State-sponsored crime. While not a classic cartel, the Cuban government is accused of running illicit activities in drug trafficking, weaponizing it against the U.S., and facilitating it for profit and political alliances, like with Venezuelan groups and FARC. That's the Colombian military. In essence, Cuba functions less as a cartel territory and more as an alleged facilitator and participant in transitional drug trafficking, or transnational drug trafficking, leveraging its intelligence and political structure for these criminal enterprises, according to various reports and accusations. And that explains why in these third world countries, the people are so poor, but the politicians are so rich, because they're all involved in illegal, illicit activity. So I kept hearing about the cartel of the Suns and Maduro and the cartel of the Suns. So I decided to look it up and see exactly who these guys were, because we know about the Sinaloa cartel, the Los Zetas working with the CIA and all that shit in Mexico, but we don't know too much about these South American cartels. We've heard of the Medellin cartel and other Colombian cartels, but not much about the cartel of the Suns. At least I haven't heard much about the cartel of the Suns, and I presume many of you haven't either. So we'll take a look, because from what I researched, it appears to me as if this cartel of the suns, cartel de los soles, is the supply is a the second stop from the manufacturer. So they are a critical part of the drug trafficking supply chain. So Cartel de las Soles is an umbrella term used to describe an alleged drug trafficking network and related criminal activity involving members of the armed forces of Venezuela, including high-ranking officers and political officials. Experts studying the drug trade do not use the term to refer to a single hierarchical organization or a literal drug cartel, but as journalistic shorthand for a system of corruption by which military and political officials profit by working with drug traffickers. And remember, I told you, they call them the cartel of the suns because the military officials, the military commanders in the Venezuelan military, those high-ranking officers, they wear the sun emblems on their uniforms. And because they're in league with the drug cartels, they're called the cartel of the suns. So I looked up cartel of the suns in the Caribbean because remember, Trump was bombing all those boats, but he was also capturing many more boats. And it turns out that the individuals on those boats that were being captured were military personnel, Venezuelan and Cuban military personnel. They weren't just fishermen or random drug traffickers. These were military soldiers under orders from their commanders to move this dope from point A to point B. And this is why before Trump initiated Operation Southcom, this is why those drug boats were able to move freely throughout the Caribbean. Because whenever the local Caribbean navies or coast guards would stop them, they would produce military IDs and they would, use their military status to gain passage, and it would work. So the cartel of the suns in the Caribbean. The cartel of the suns is an alleged network of corrupt Venezuelan military and government officials involved in large-scale drug trafficking using Venezuela as a transit point to the Caribbean, like the Dominican Republic and beyond, with the U.S. recently designating it a foreign terrorist organization and targeting it militarily. Despite Venezuelan denials, it's seen less as a traditional cartel and more as corrupt military cells facilitating drug transport, not production, with figures like Maduro implicated. So again, this is why Trump was bombing those drug boats, because those drug boats were military vessels under orders to transport that dope. So they were not civilian vessels. That's why they were treated as military targets. Key aspects. Who? High-ranking and low-level members of Venezuela's armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, National Guard. What they do: facilitate the transport of cocaine and other drugs from South America through Venezuela to the Caribbean, Dominican Republic, Suriname, and onward to Europe and the United States. Structure: described as a loose network of cells rather than a single hierarchical cartel operating within the state's security apparatus. Caribbean connection: the Dominican Republic is a significant hub for money laundering for these cartels. Now, what's funny is when me and my dad went down to the British Virgin Islands in 2008, and we worked on that Viceroy project from 2008 to 2009. That was the biggest project that we ever had, and we made $1 million in a year on that project. Right? I had come to learn a lot because I was buying my weed, smoking my weed and shit. And a lot of the guys that were selling the weed also had a healthy supply of cocaine. Now, I was never a cocaine user, so I had no interest in the cocaine. But in sitting down, smoking spliffs with the guys and talking with the guys, I come to learn that the biggest supplier of cocaine to the Virgin Islands and to St. Martin and Antigua and all the other Caribbean islands was the Dominican Republic. A lot of the cocaine, 90% of it, I would presume, was coming out of the Dominican Republic. So it turns out that the Dominican Republic was one of the biggest hubs for cocaine. And Puerto Rico was a hub too, but Puerto Rico was a hub to transport the dope to the United States because it was American territory. While Dominican Republic, they also moved dope to the United States, but their main market was the Caribbean islands. And a lot of that cocaine found its way into the nostrils of American tourists. So they were still getting those American dollars. U.S. actions 2025. The U.S. designated the group a foreign terrorist organization, linking it to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and launching military operations, Operation Southern Spear, against traffickers in the Caribbean. And Operation Southern Spear was the targeting of those military boats. And only the ones that did not stop were the ones that were bombed. But the ones that stopped and surrendered, well, they were taken into custody and the boats were essentially destroyed. This is why you see all that video footage of empty boats being blown up, because the crew had already been taken into custody and were on their way to be interrogated. And upon their interrogations, they learned about the drug networks here in the United States. So we started seeing a bunch of big busts here in the United States. And apparently they were snitching on their bosses back in Venezuela. And thus the intel on Maduro was confirmed that he was trafficking the dope. Venezuela's stance. The Venezuelan government denies these allegations of complicity in drug trafficking. Of course they're gonna. Every drug dealer that gets busted says he ain't selling drugs. Even Nino Brown in New Jack City, what do you say? It was the educated brother from the bank selling all the dope. That was the mastermind behind the dope dealing. Remember that? So no drug dealing government is going to cop to that crime. They're going to deny it. Of course they are. In essence, it's a network of corrupt military and government actors deeply embedded in Venezuela using Caribbean routes for drug smuggling, drawing significant U.S. counter-narcotics attention. So that's the cartel of the sun. So I looked up how many drug boats have been seized by the U.S. Navy, by the U.S. military, right? Or captured was the word. How many drug boats have been captured by the U.S. military? And this is what it told me. It told me a lot without telling me. So I'll tell you. The number of drug smuggling vessels captured by the U.S. military is difficult to quantify, as many are destroyed by lethal force rather than seized. And the operations are typically led by the U.S. Coast Guard with military support. So they're saying the boats were destroyed rather than seized, right? But it said nothing about the crews being taken into custody. Take note of that. The U.S. military, primarily U.S. Southern Command or U.S. Southcom forces, has conducted at least 35 strikes on 36 alleged drug smuggling vessels in the Eastern Pacific Ocean and Caribbean Sea since September 2025, resulting in at least 115 deaths. These vessels are generally destroyed in the strikes. In contrast, the U.S. Coast Guard, which is a law enforcement agency under the Department of Homeland Security, but often works in concert with the military on counter-narcotics operations, focuses on the legal process of interdiction and capture. The U.S. Coast Guard set a historic record in fiscal year 2025, seizing nearly 510 pounds of cocaine and other illicit drugs, which involved numerous vessel interdictions and the arrest of 34 suspected smugglers. The Coast Guard typically transfers captured subjects and evidence, drugs, or boats for prosecution. Transfers them to who? Either the military or DOJ, depending on where they get caught. But look at this. They wouldn't be able to seize 500,000 pounds of drugs if these boats weren't stopping and they were being blown up in the water. So there's your indicator that they've been stopping. See, interdiction and capture. Those are the key words. So they've been stopping and capturing more boats than they've been blowing up. So all that news about Trump's bombing fishermen and boats and all, it's bullshit. These are military operatives. These are military soldiers on a military operation under orders by their governments to traffic these drugs across the Caribbean Sea. And many of them, more of them are stopping and being apprehended than are running and getting blown the fuck up. The precise cumulative total of all drug boats captured and seized by the U.S. forces, military, and Coast Guard over the entire history of the counter narcotics operations is not a single publicly tracked number, as statistics are generally reported on an annual or fiscal year basis and often focus on the amount of drugs seized rather than the number of vessels. But again, they wouldn't be seizing the drugs if they weren't blowing up the vessels. I mean, they wouldn't be seizing the drugs if they were blowing up the vessels. That means those vessels are being interdicted, they're being stopped, the crews are being captured, and intel is being relayed. And this is what brought us to Maduro. And it's going to lead us to Colombia because the Colombian president is now freaking the fuck out. And trying to mobilize what little military he's got. And Cuba is, well, they're in the crosshairs now because, well, they're a major hub as well. So people are in trouble. Shit's going down, and 2026 is going to be lit. Hold on, I got more. Why did I drop down that gallery? I got more. There's a little bit more, just a little more. I think it's like 9 more slides, but they're pretty short. We ain't hit $100 yet, y'all. We got 9 more slides and we're at 60. No, we're at 70. My bad. We're at 70. So we need 30 more. Hit that 100. We'll do the whole indictment tonight. So here's the 9-slide presentation that I almost forgot to give you. So confirmed Venezuela bombshell intel drop. Narco General Hugo Carvajal confesses CIA knowing election fraud. U.S. senators funded by narco regime. So this is intel coming from a general, a Venezuelan general. I guess he's been taken into custody too. How did he get captured? Who knows? Maybe he was on one of them boats. Who knows? Kobe, control yourself, man. Control yourself. Dick discipline, my friend. And ambitions of a rider, don't fall for that shit. Kobe's a troll. Well, hey, y'all go ahead, exchange numbers and all that. Do what you do. Hurry up, get it out the way because you're distracting people. Now I seen it. And I ain't no hater. I ain't gonna hate on you, Kobe. Do your thing, brother, but dig discipline, my friend. Hollering at people in the chat rooms. Boy, if you don't go somewhere with that shit. You be on them dating apps, don't you, Kobe? You got a Tinder account? But you waited till your baby mama went to sleep? Then you get in the chat room, start hollering at people? He said she going. I know. I know. I see that. You've been quite successful. Congratulations. Just don't wake your baby mama up with that bullshit. Anyway, so Venezuelan intel chief Hugo Carvajal confesses from U.S. custody. So he is in U.S. custody. Smartmatic, excuse me. Smartmatic was built for fraud. The CIA knew, and U.S. senators were bought off by a narco-terror regime. Trump and Pete Hegseth launch a full-scale counteroffensive to destroy the deep state from within. This is the Venezuela list. This is war. You see that? This is war. This is what I've been telling y'all. This is why the strikes in Venezuela were more than justified, because Venezuela has been waging war and committing acts of war against us. So Venezuela, a narco-terrorist state. According to Carvajal, Venezuela under Maduro is a full-spectrum narco-terrorist regime, financed through cocaine and heroin distribution, protected by FARC, ELN, Hezbollah, and Cuban intelligence, exporting organized crime into Latin America and the U.S., weaponizing immigration, cyber ops, and destabilization tactics. Okay? So we are under attack. We are at full-scale war. The only difference is Trump's act of war was more overt than covert. That's the only difference. Right, Jaden Stewart. They over here playing Love Boat and shit. I used to forbid that kind of stuff. Y'all remember? Who's been following me long enough to remember them days? When people be hooking up in the chat and shit, and I'll block both their ass. Like, this ain't the goddamn Love Boat. Fuck out of here. Y'all remember that shit? I was so mean. Maybe I was single, bitter, and angry. Maybe that's what it was. But I wasn't hating. Like, I wasn't mad. I just felt like it was distracting it was taken away from the teaching. You know, like same way a college professor would react if, you know, two students were in his class making out and shit. He'd be like, what the fuck? Like, y'all not paying attention? So I get it. I get it. But I ain't gonna do that. I ain't no hater. I ain't no hater at all. At least Kobe's not gay. At least he's not gay. So we, you know, I give him that. I give him that. And ambitions, you say you going. So I don't know. I don't want to know. That's between y'all. But at least he's not gay. Because in this day and age, that shit's an accomplishment. Be proud. Where is the full list? Oh, here is the full list released by Carvajal, the Venezuela list. The Venezuela list, U.S. senators funded by the Maduro regime. They have the blood of American citizens on their hands. Well, yeah, they do have the blood of American citizens on their hands because they opened up the borders and let the narcos in. So here's the list, and it's 5 pages. Lisa Murkowski, Republican of Alaska. Mark Kelly, Democrat of Arizona. Ruben Gallego, Democrat of Arizona. Alex Padilla, Democrat of California. Adam Shifty Schiff, Democrat of California. Michael Bennett, Democrat, Colorado. John Hickenlooper, Democrat, Colorado. Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut. Chris Murphy, Democrat, excuse me. Sorry. Democrat of Connecticut. Chris Coons, Democrat of Delaware. John Ossoff, Democrat, Georgia. You see, there's a lot more Democrats than Republicans, but there's still Republicans in the mix. Raphael Warnock, he won by election fraud, Democrat of Georgia. Brian Schatz, Democrat of Hawaii. Mazie Hirono, Democrat of Hawaii. Dick Durbin, Democrat of Illinois. Tammy Duckworth, Democrat of Illinois. Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa. Johnny Ernst, Republican of Iowa. Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky. Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky. Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana. Susan Collins, Republican of Maine. Angus King, supposed to be independent of Maine, but we know independents are Democrats. Chris Van Hollen, Democrat of Maryland. Angela Also Brooks, Democrat of Maryland. And the list goes on. Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts. Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts. Gary Peters, Democrat of Michigan. Elisa Slotkin, Democrat of Michigan. Amy Klobuchar, Democrat of Minnesota. Tina Smith, Democrat of Minnesota. Roger Wicker, Republican of Mississippi. Bob Fisher, Republican of Nebraska. Jackie Rosen, Democrat of Nevada. Catherine Cortez Masto, Democrat of Nevada. Jean Shaheen, Democrat of New Hampshire. Maggie Hassan, Democrat of New Hampshire. Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey. And there's 2 more pages. Andy Kim, Democrat of New Jersey. Martin Heinrich, Democrat of New Mexico. Ben Ray Lujan, Democrat of New Mexico. Chuck Schumer. Oh, that's one of the Democrats that wanted you to that was urging your employers to force vaccinate you. How about that? Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York. Well, we know he's bought off. Kristen Gillibrand, Democrat of New York. Tom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina. James Langford, Republican of Oklahoma. Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon. Jeff Merkley, Democrat of Oregon. Wait, wasn't there a different Merkley in here? Oh, that's Markey. Okay. Dave McCormick, Republican of Pennsylvania. Jack Reed, Democrat of Rhode Island. Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat of Rhode Island. John Thune, Republican, South Dakota. John Cornyn, Republican of Texas. Bernie Sanders. It says independent of Vermont, but he's really a Democrat. Peter Welch, Democrat of Vermont. Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia. Tim Kaine, Democrat of Virginia. Patty Murray, Democrat of Washington. Maria Cantwell, Democrat of Washington. Jim Justice, Republican of West Virginia. Tammy Baldwin, Democrat of Wisconsin. Now, that's a pretty long list. That is a pretty sizable list. And that's a whole lot of people that are about to go down with Maduro. And I can't wait. So everybody that's mad at Trump, they're mad at Trump because they don't understand the gravity of the situation. It ain't just about drug dealing. It ain't just about dope dealing. It's about the usurpation of our election. It's about them trying to seize power in our country. It's about these foreign agents trying to take over America. And they're using their sellout treasonous cohorts here in America by way of the Democratic Party and the Rhino Republicans, like the ones we just went over the list about, to try to do that. And they've been somewhat successful, I'd have to say, because for years and years, since the 80s, Bill Clinton been shipping, and since he was governor of Arkansas, he's been importing tons and tons of cocaine from this same group of people. And now we finally got a president that's doing something about it. And here's the thing. All the people that were saying, I want to see arrests about the 2020 election. These crooked politicians that got into office shouldn't be in there. They're treasonous traitors and this and that. And all that is correct. And I want to see it too. But this had to happen first. The dope and the manpower supply line had to be cut off first. Because the dope money is what funds the sleeper cells. And the sleeper cells are who activate and retaliate against the American people, whether they kill the judges, the prosecutors, they commit mass casualty events or whatnot to stop the investigations and stop the prosecutions of their cohorts. Those supply lines had to be cut off. So the mass deportation to remove the manpower, the shutting down of the Venezuela drug trafficking to reduce their cash flow. Now they all have to operate on a budget. Their budget is no longer endless because their supply is no longer bottomless. It's going to run dry now. So now the coast is clear to move on the high-ranking individuals here in America, because the deep state's ability to retaliate against the American people has now been significantly reduced enough to where the ball can start rolling. Now, here's how it works. The Venezuelans, the Colombians produce the coke, the dope. And I say dope because it's coke, heroin, and fentanyl, and a bunch of other shit. They ship it out through Venezuela, up through Central America, and it makes its way to Mexico, to the Mexican drug cartels, who then ship it across the border to their operatives here in the United States, where they sell all their bricks, and the local American drug dealers then get their supply. This is why most big gangsters that you learned about throughout history had Hispanic connects. because these were cartel connections. And all of that dope was coming from Cartel de las Soles, Cartel of the Sun, the Venezuelan government, the Colombian government, and all the other bought off governments in between. So the Mexican drug cartels were being supplied by the South American cartels. So if Trump wanted to go after the Mexican cartels, he couldn't go after them as aggressively as he wanted to, because as long as the Venezuelans were still operating, the Mexican cartels would still be able to get their dope, and they would still be able to flip it for cash and have funding to resist the American, the American forces. So in order to stymie their ability to resist American aggression, I guess I could say, they are now they are now limited in their ability to resist American aggression because their supply line has been cut off. And all these big drug busts that we've been seeing in recent months, those operations are now going to be permanently shut down because there's no resupply coming. And if there's no resupply coming, there's no more money flowing. Now everybody's on a budget. And when you're on a budget, it's very hard to fight a war. Maduro, Maduro is the thread that unravels the entire tapestry. From the drug trafficking to the human trafficking to the bought and paid for cartel friendly politicians from South America all the way to America, and the election fraud. That's going to be the big one. And that, I believe, that is the sealed superseding indictment. I believe that's what it is. Y'all, we're at $70 on donations. 30 more and I'll give you guys all 25 pages. But if not, let me see how far I'll go. Introduction. That's page 2. All right. So we'll go to page 2 and we'll stop at the defendants. Yep. So we'll do the first 2 pages. If we don't hit 100, by the time I'm done with the first 2 pages, I'm going to cut it off there, and then we'll continue it either tomorrow night or just roll it into Friday night. Not sure yet. But I do want to give you all this indictment, though. I do. I really, really do. Give me a second. Man, this Maduro shit is going to unravel everything. And now what's going to happen is, because you see, Trump couldn't arrest all the crooked politicians before because there were too many crooked judges that were going to let him go. Look what that judge did with Letitia James. You see that all this was done for a reason. All the judges that upheld the election fraud, all that was done for a reason. Because Trump was showing the American people that the courts can't be trusted. And I believe, because people were saying that Pam Bondi was going to be out as the attorney general and Sidney Powell was going to replace her, right? So what I think is going to happen is Pam Bondi is going to remain as the attorney general, excuse me, for this initial indictment. But when the superseding indictment is unsealed, if it pertains to the election fraud, Sidney Powell is going to replace Pam Bondi, and Sidney Powell is going to handle the superseding indictment. That's my prediction. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how Israel ties into all this on the next show. So don't worry. I got Israel on my radar too. Kobe, what happened, bro? You disappeared? You was risen and winning. I don't know what happened, man. Did I throw your game off? I didn't mean to pour salt in your game. I wasn't trying to do that. Definitely not trying to do that. But anyway, so let's get to the introduction. Sorry, I was having a sip of my Red Bull there. For over 25 years, let me see if I can blow this up a little more. Ah, that's too much. Yeah, that's too much. Yeek. For over 25 years, leaders of Venezuela have abused their positions of public trust and corrupted once legitimate institutions to import tons of cocaine into the United States. That's a strong opening statement. Nicolas Maduro Moros, the defendant, is at the forefront of that corruption and has partnered with his co-conspirators to use his illegally obtained authority and the institutions he corroded to transport thousands of tons of cocaine to the United States. Since his early days in Venezuela, in Venezuelan government, Maduro Moros has tarnished every public office he has held. As a member of the Venezuela's National Assembly, Maduro Moros moved loads of cocaine under the protection of Venezuelan law enforcement. As Venezuela's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Maduro Moros provided Venezuelan diplomatic passports to drug traffickers and facilitated diplomatic cover for planes used by money launderers to repatriate drug proceeds from Mexico to Venezuela. As Venezuela's president and now de facto ruler, Maduro Moros allows cocaine-fueled corruption to flourish for his own benefit, for the benefit of members of his ruling regime, and for the benefit of his family members. Yep, and that's exactly why in these Western Latin American nations that happen to be third world shitholes, the people live in extreme abject poverty and the politicians live high on the hog. And they can't share the money with the civilians because they'll have to disclose where that money's coming from. So they just use their position to move the dope, get their money, live comfortable, and well, fuck everything and everybody else. And you know what else that means? That means if high-ranking politicians in these Latin American countries and high-ranking military officials in these Latin American countries are dealing with tons and tons of cocaine, you know some of that shit's going up their noses. Well, let's continue. And guys, we got a little ways to go to get to that 100 mark. We got a little bit more to get to that 100 mark. And then I could really lay it on you. But I guess y'all want to do it in pots. So I guess we'll do it in pots. And that's cool. Maybe nobody wants to sit here for 7 hours, and that's cool. Maybe I shouldn't either. Okay, so part number 3, point 3. Nicolas Maduro Moros, the defendant, now sits atop a corrupt, illegitimate government that for decades has leveraged government power to protect and promote illegal activity, including drug trafficking. You see, so it ain't just drug trafficking. It's murders, it's human trafficking, it's sex trafficking, it's child trafficking. It ain't just drugs. Pay attention to the verbiage. Illegal activity, including drug trafficking. Pay attention to the words. That means they were doing more than just slinging dope. That drug trafficking, excuse me, has enriched and entrenched Venezuela's political and military elite, including Minister of the Interior, Justice and Peace Diosdado Cabello Rondon, the defendant and former Minister of the Interior and Justice Ramon Rodriguez Chacin, the defendant. That massive scale drug trafficking has also concentrated power and wealth in the hands of Maduro Moros' family, including his wife, the purported First Lady of Venezuela, Celia Adela Flores de Maduro, the defendant, and Maduro Moros' son, member of Venezuela's National Assembly, Nicolas Ernesto Maduro Guerrera, a.k.a. Nicalisto, a.k.a. the Prince, the defendant. This cycle of narcotics-based corruption lines the pockets of Venezuelan officials and their families, while also benefiting violent narco terrorists who operate with impunity on Venezuelan soil and who help produce, protect, and transport tons of cocaine to the United States. At various times since in or about 1999, Venezuelan officials, including Nicolas Maduro, Moros, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, and Ramon Rodriguez Chacin, the defendants, have partnered with narco terrorists from Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, FARC, or as I like to call them, FART. Ejército de Liberación Nacional, ELN, the Sinaloa cartel, the Zetas, and Tren de Aragua, including Tren de Aragua's leader, Hector Rusenford Guerrero Flores, aka Nino Guerrero, the defendant. In sum, Maduro Moros and his conspirators have for decades partnered with some of the most violent and prolific drug traffickers and narco terrorists in the world, and relied on corrupt officials throughout the region to distribute tons of cocaine to the United States. How was my Spanish with those names? Was I all right with the names, or did I butcher them? I feel like I butchered them. Okay, maybe a few. So this indictment actually names several people as defendants. And if you go back up here to the top, it ain't just Maduro, it's all these defendants, all named. That means they're all in custody. Not just Maduro. Maduro was probably the last one. So they probably had done several snatch and grabs in Venezuela. And here's how special operations work, right? Those types of special operations. Trump doesn't want to provoke an international incident, right? So he couldn't just openly, because look at the backlash that he's getting for going after Maduro in Venezuela, right? But there's a bunch of other Venezuelans that are on this indictment list who presumably have already been captured. So here's how U.S. Special Forces would do it. They would actually go in under cover of darkness, eliminate whoever they need to eliminate to get to the target. They would snatch the target in the middle of the night, and they would take them across the border to a neighboring country that has an extradition treaty. Or they would just take them to the coast, take them out to sea, and take them into custody on one of their ships. And then put them on a plane or a helicopter and fly them to Guantanamo Bay and then forward them to the U.S. or whatever, however they would do it. But they would send in special forces quietly to snatch and grab him out of his bed in the middle of the night. Nobody knows they were even there. And everybody wakes up in the morning and the target's gone. That would be the way that the rest of these guys were taken into custody. And then the big show was made when Trump went after Maduro, because that was the public disclosure to let us know that the military is active, has been active, because these types of operations don't happen overnight. It takes months, sometimes years of intel gathering and analysis and pattern observation in order to make these operations go off without a hitch. So from the time those ships blockaded Venezuela, those spec ops units were already deployed. Remember, Trump was talking about using the CIA jackals, the CIA to operate in Venezuela. Well, it was the CIA and it was spec ops. Presumably Delta Forces, that was the unit that got Maduro. I'm pretty sure they went and got everybody else too. Damn, Kobe, what are you having? Mood swings? What, you just go jack off and come back? Like you was just risen the girls up and shit and being all cool, and then you turned into hold on. I have to do this. You was just so cool a second ago, man. What happened? Then you come back on some suicidal shit. You know what I'm saying? Then you turn into this dude right here. My man said, I'm going to die behind this shit. I'm up in pole on God. Like what? Ambitions of a writer. You see what I was saying? Something's wrong with that guy. I, I got love for him, but something's wrong with him. That's all I'm saying. Oh, it was Bud Light? Okay. Drinking that tranny beer. Stop drinking that shit, man. Drink a Heineken. Drink a man beer. I don't know if you're aware, Kobe, but look up Dylan Mulvaney. He was the trans gentleman that they used to advertise Bud Light. And ever since then, like masculine men like us, like we stopped drinking that shit. I never drank it because I thought any type of Bud beer was pisswasser. So maybe I played too much GTA in the past, but I called it pisswasser because it was known to have a lot of GMO ingredients. And I had actually downloaded a list of beers that had a lot of GMO ingredients, and Heineken was not on the list. So Heineken then became my beer of choice. So stop drinking that pisswasser. He said, I need love, man. My mom died when I was 3. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that, Kobe. I'm sorry to hear that. And you know what? That's why there was always something inside of me that felt like I couldn't go too hard on you, bro. Even though you came in here trolling me the first time, you know what I'm saying? Like there was just something in me that softened up. And I know that feeling of needing love, bro. I know that feeling, man. I can totally empathize with that. But don't let the alcohol control your emotions, because then it'll make you look crazy. Like you was just in here hollering at ambitions and y'all was vibing and all that. Then you come back on some suicidal shit like 20 minutes later. Like, don't do that. The alcohol make you do stupid shit, man. Trust me, I've been there, bro. I have been there more than once. It's not a good place, bro. But just know, man, you are not alone. You're in a chat room full of love. You getting love. You know what I'm saying? Don't don't let your emotions and your vices fuck it up. You know what I'm saying? Appreciate what you got. Appreciate that you're here. Cause she could have rejected you and been like, ew, get out of here, weirdo. But she ain't say that. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you got it, bro. You ain't got nothing to be sad or mad about. Jaden Stewart said he on the drugs. He on drugs. I don't know if you know, Kobe, but this is turning out to be a pretty good night for you, bro. Revel in the moment, man. Revel in the moment. Kobe says, I need a lawyer. My cousin, grad Gerard Wash Law School. Oh, my cousin graduated from George Washington Law School. What do you need a lawyer for? Who you trying to sue? You need no damn lawyer, man. You need to put that piss wasser down, stop drinking that shit, and go get you a man drink. If you really gonna do it, man, just do it for real. Get you some bourbon or something, man. Some shit you can sip real slow, light your blunt, and just go to sleep. Just go to sleep, bro. You sound like you need some sleep, man. You don't need a lawyer. You need rest. Your soul needs rest. You've been restless for too long, and you're losing control of your emotions. You're letting the habit overtake your better judgment. And I'm only saying this because I love you, bro. I got love for you, man. I want to see you win, bro. I want to see you win. And a lot of times, our worst enemy be ourselves. You know what I'm saying? I've been there, bro. I've been there. Probably worse. Probably worse. Oh, you got busted for trafficking? Motherfuckers can sell crack and get 5 years in state. They trying to send me to feds. Well, were you crossing state lines with the shit? Did you have connects across state lines? Because if that's the case, bro, you can't really do nothing about that, man. With the feds, bro, unless they really fuck your case up, like you can't escape that. The best thing you can do is plead out, take the least amount of time they give you, do all of that shit, come home and fly straight, bro. Or option number two is like, you know, do the gingerbread man, but that's only going to last for so long. But there is some hope. Frank Matthews escaped the feds. The feds been looking for him since God knows when, and they just recently announced that they're giving up the search for him. So Frank won. Just got to be good at laying low. And listen, bro, don't up the pole on the police, man. If the police got to come get you, first of all, if you already got caught and went to jail and all you waiting on is a court date, just all you got to do is go to court, bro. Just go to court. You know what I'm saying? Just go to court, take what they give you, appeal that shit if you feel like you were done wrong, and fight it that way. You know what I'm saying? Because trying to engage with law enforcement, you by yourself, you know what's going to happen, man. It's not going to end well. And that's not a good way to go. You already did the crime, bro. Just do the time, man. That's the best I can tell you. Do the time. You know, you get free college. You can get a college degree while you're in jail for free, right? You know that, right? Like literally all you got to do is like not get raped, not get shanked, not get beaten up by the guards. And you could actually come out on top, bro. You can come out with like a general contractor's license and shit, college degree. You know what I'm saying? He said they gonna clone me. You're not famous enough for them to clone you. They're not gonna waste money on that. Trust me, man. They're gonna lock you away like everybody else and let you out when you're supposed to get out like everybody else, man. You'll be fine. You'll be all right. All you gotta do is lay low, man. That's it. Just lay low. And don't be a punk while you're in there. Just don't be a punk while you're in there. Because you're gonna get punked. Anyway. And if it's your first charge too, you know what I'm saying, you might get a little bit of time, you might get probation. You know what I'm saying? You never know, bro. You never know. So, anyway, we're almost at the 3-hour mark, guys. And long story short, the Maduro arrest, we're going to finish that indictment on the next show. The Maduro arrest is going to be the thread to unravel everything. And that's why the whole establishment is turning up against Trump right now, because they're scared. Because they're scared. They're afraid. because they know what's about to happen. And with the midterms coming up, oh man. I think these indictments are going to come down before the midterm happens. That's what I think. But to really, really get into it, to really go quote unquote conspiracy theory, going back to 2020 arrests and executions of famous people, this could all be part of the movie where the Maduro arrest already happened, because Operation Southcom's been going on since 2018, right? So it could have been that the Maduro arrest had already happened and he was just replaced with a body double, and all this was just a big show. Because when you go look at the footage of the bombs going off, they kind of look like fireworks to me. Like they do not look like real explosives at all. But, you know, I wasn't there. All I can go by is what I see on the video, and the videos can be deceiving. So I can't say it for sure. But let's say all this already happened. All these politicians had already been arrested and indicted and replaced and everything. This is all just going to be one big show for public disclosure. But for the general public who doesn't buy into that theory or doesn't believe that theory, I believe it because I've done the research, right? To the public that doesn't believe it, let's just play the surface, right? This is going to lead to all the arrests that we want to see happen, the expulsions from Congress, the impeachments of the judges, the arrests, because as each American tied to the Maduro regime and the drug trafficking and the human trafficking and the election fraud, as each one of them go down, in order to save their own skin, they're going to start giving up people that they work with. And that's when we're going to start to see, excuse me, not only the Congress people go down, but we're going to see the federal judges going down. We're going to see the federal prosecutors and the state prosecutors going down. That's when the whole thing is going to come crashing down. And that's why everything has seemed, even though everything has been so frustrating for us, because we keep seeing these people slip through the cracks. Some crooked judge somewhere drops the charges. We hear about all these crimes and all this fraud being uncovered, but we're not seeing any arrests or anything happening. That's because Maduro had to go. The supply chain had to be cut off so funds can be limited. And they're going to give it a few more months so their money really runs out and the streets really dry up. And then we're going to see those moves being made. That's when we're going to see the arrests that everybody was hoping to see. Now, where Israel comes in, which I'm going to get more in depth in on the next show, the Israeli Mossad, they help facilitate keeping the American politicians in line. And they finance a lot of the drugs. And the Israeli Mossad are there are here as sleeper cells to make sure that the politicians that were bought off continue to do their job that they were paid to do. And if they don't do it, well, the hit squad goes after them. Remember MS-13? Remember how Trump cracked down on MS-13 during his first term? Well, it became well known that the Clinton organization, Hillary Clinton and friends, they would use MS-13 gang members as their hit squads. And the MS-13 gang members were used as the hit squads because the Clintons had their connections to the cartels through the drug importation, the cocaine importation. And they would finance the importation of the cocaine, and MS-13 would be tasked with selling the cocaine. So not only were they offing the drugs for the Clintons, but they were killing whoever the Clintons needed killed. And with Bill Clinton being the president, of course, he had access to CIA operatives. Hillary Clinton being Secretary of State under Obama, same thing. So the Clinton operation was allowed to continue. And that was all because, one, the people at the top in the United States government were complicit with the crime. So the lower level people, like the prosecutors and the federal judges and the investigators that actually thought that the government was really against the drugs, when they were making headway in their investigations were either shut down or they were silenced one way or another. In most cases, they were deleted in order to be silenced. And that's because the people at the top were complicit in the crimes. But now we have an administration that is not complicit in the crimes. So the lower level people who know what's going on and weren't able to speak out before or weren't able to take action before, now they have the ability to take action because they have a commander in chief who ain't complicit in the crimes. And he is in favor of prosecuting these criminals and shutting down the crimes, because just like how this drug trafficking and this cartel mentality turned those Latin American countries upside down, they were going to do the same shit here in America. The cartels were establishing themselves. They were creating a nice deep footprint for themselves. They were taking over entire communities. And before you know it, America would have turned into the United States of Mexico. And we would have been a worse shithole than we were becoming under Biden. All this had to be stopped at the source. And it was brilliant to go after Maduro first, because That's the hub where everything is leaving from, right? So if Colombia is producing all the cocaine and they're handing it over to the Venezuelan government to ship it out to the rest of the world, what happens at the warehouse? So Colombia would be the warehouse, the manufacturer's warehouse, right? And Venezuela would basically be the trucking company that comes with the tractor trailers to pick up the loads and ship them out to all the buyers, right? So what happens at that warehouse, at that manufacturing warehouse, if the trucking company goes out of business and the trucks don't show up? What happens? That manufacturer has to shut down their operation because they've already filled their warehouse with manufactured products and they don't have any more room to store any more products, so they can't manufacture anything else. Not only that, they can't move that product, so they're sitting on it. So by Trump taking out Venezuela first, or essentially shutting down the trucking company, Colombia being the manufacturing warehouse, one, they're not going to be able to manufacture much more cocaine because they can't get it out because the trucks, because the shipping company, the trucking company ain't showing up. And when the U.S. military moves on Colombia, they'll be caught in possession of tons and tons and tons and tons of cocaine that they've been forced to sit on because they got no way to move it. It's absolutely brilliant. See, this is all strategic. It's all strategic. And Russia and China are sitting it out and they're letting Trump deal with South America because it's a favor for a favor. Because when it's time for Russia and China, by way of their Iranian and Syrian and the Houthis and everybody else, their proxies in the Middle East and the Turks and shit, when it's their turn to move on Israel, Trump's going to sit it out. You mark my words, America will not be assisting Israel militarily when when the Middle East collapses in on them. So it's a favor for a favor. And everybody that's mad about Maduro and mad about Venezuela and mad at Trump, one, they were Trump haters from the beginning, and there's nothing positive that they can tell you that Trump has done, even though he's done a lot of positive, a lot more positive than most people even know. The second group of people that are mad at Venezuela, mad about Trump, mad about Venezuela, and mad at Trump and all that stupid shit, the second group of people, they're the ones that fell for the Epstein propaganda, fell for the Israel play, and now they're susceptible to anything anti-Trump. Because it's very easy to fall into that. That's what the ignorant masses are saying. So it's much easier to join the crowd than to stand out and say, no, you're wrong. It's much easier. And it's probably a lot more profitable too. But to stand on truth, stand on business, it's always a difficult road. It's always a difficult task. There's always going to be resistance. And that's fine. I don't mind it because the truth will prevail. And that's just what it is. So the second group of people that are mad at Israel are the ones that have fallen for the propaganda. The third group of people that are mad, or not mad at Israel, mad about Venezuela and mad at Trump. Because the Israel thing, I'm going to have to break that down on the next show. But if you go look at my community posts, I've been showing you the strategy. He's been showing his strategy. So pay attention. But the third group of people that are mad are the people that are benefiting from this illicit drug trade, which would be, and the election fraud, which would be, of course, your Democratic politicians. That's why they're all coming out in unison in support of Nicolas Maduro. So you got the people that are just looking for a reason to be mad at Trump. You got the people that have always been mad at Trump because they've been brainwashed from the beginning. Then you got the people that are now looking for a reason to be mad at Trump. Then you got the people that are benefiting directly from the drug trade. And then you got the people that just don't know shit and believe everything they hear. So all this fear mongering and all this, oh, they're gonna take over America and we're not gonna have, listen, if you have a cell phone, you already don't have fucking privacy. So if you're mad about TSA handing over names of travelers to ICE and you're concerned about losing your privacy over that, then you missed the train when we lost our privacy under Obama's NDAA and under the Patriot Act. You missed that train. They have the technology and they have the ability to tap anybody's cell phone, anybody's camera, anybody's microphone, and listen in and watch everything you fucking do. They have the ability to do that already. Our privacy has already been jeopardized. It's only a matter of discretion whether they choose to invade that privacy or not. But they do possess the capability, and they have for a long time. So TSA handing names over to ICE means absolutely fucking nothing. And we don't lose any more privacy than we have already lost. So if you're mad about that, you're just looking for something to be upset about, because we've already lost our privacy. Newsflash. But there is some positive to come from that, because now these illegals can't fly no more. You remember when they were kicking Americans off their flights to let the illegals get on the flights? Matter of fact, Brother Sanchez had a personal experience like that, and he made this video where he was traveling, and he must have been on the road for a while because his hair was uncut and he looked a little crazy. And he was walking through Atlanta airport riffing. He was mad as hell, and rightfully so, because he made it on time to get on his flight, and they didn't let him get on his flight because they said the flight was full. But what they did was they gave up his seat for an illegal alien, because that's when the Biden administration was moving these illegals all around the country on commercial airlines. And Sanchez happened to fall victim to that shit directly. He just didn't know what was going on. He just thought it was crazy as hell that he arrived in time for his flight and they ain't let him on the plane. But me being me, understanding the situation, looking at the news articles and the reports of airlines doing this to American citizens, I concluded that is what happened to Sanchez. They gave up his seat to an illegal that they were moving around the country. So now, because ICE is actually being allowed to enforce immigration law, which is their job, people who are not legally permitted to be in the United States, when the names get handed over to ICE and ICE runs the names, the ones that need to be weeded out are going to be weeded out. And if you have your papers and you're an American citizen or a legal resident, you have nothing to fear when it comes to ICE, because you are legally permitted to be in the United States, and ICE can't touch you. That's like a city cop, an Orlando PD officer, running into you in Atlanta, and he's in his Orlando PD cruiser. He can't pull you over or write you a ticket because he's out of his jurisdiction. He's a regular citizen just like you are, because he's outside of the area that he's allowed to have authority in. It's the same thing with ICE. They can't touch American citizens and legal residents, only illegal. So they're scanning the names for the names of undocumented illegal aliens. That's all it is. And once it's over with, they not doing that no more, because ICE can't do shit to you. Unless of course you try to harm them and they have to defend themselves, which is what any American citizen should be allowed to do. And in a lot of states, they are allowed to do, except for those anti-constitutional, anti-Second Amendment states, of course. But law enforcement understands this, and this is standard procedure. So when it comes to that woman that got shot in Minnesota, well, tough shit. You should have got out the truck when the ICE agents told you to get out. You were under arrest, so they had a right to take you into custody. And you were under arrest for obstructing. And it wasn't just ICE agents at the scene. Homeland Security was there too. So ICE wasn't going to arrest her. Homeland Security was. It just so happens to be the ICE agents assisting in detaining her, which they are legally and lawfully allowed to do. They are law enforcement and they have jurisdiction. They just don't have authority to effect an arrest, but they do have the authority to detain. That lady did herself wrong, Kobe. Go watch the fucking video. Because if that was your black ass behind the wheel, they would have lit you up just as quick. You and I both know that because we've seen them do it. But because it's some liberal white woman, it's fucking headline news. She did it to herself. She was given several chances to get out of the vehicle, and she chose to not put the vehicle in park, but put it in drive and floor the pedal with a federal agent standing right in front of her, which is attempted vehicular manslaughter. That vehicle is now a deadly weapon. So she was not unarmed. She was armed with a 2,000-pound SUV. Thus, she was shot in self-defense. It was a good shoot. Not to mention the suspicious circumstances under which she crashed into a federal vehicle, an ICE vehicle, and it was right in the midst of an ICE protest. It was almost like an ambush, like the protesters already knew ICE was going to be there, so they were there lying in wait. When ICE shows up, boom, this crazy white lady acts out because they put the battery in her back. And what I was saying earlier, any American citizen that's willing to risk their life and their freedom in protection of these illegal aliens, they are a threat to this country. Because they're willing to risk life and limb in protection of foreign nationals who are here to literally replace them. They're being given all our tax dollars while we got to bust our ass and get nothing. And these dumbass liberals are out there advocating for them. Mind you, those same liberals, when they're asked if they would take these migrants into their personal homes, they all say no. How about that for hypocrisy? So it's sad that she died, but she could have she did herself dirty. She did herself dirty. And what I see happening amongst the people that are outraged about this is the same shit Black Lives Matter did to black men in 2020. All these black men that did stupid shit with the police and got themselves shot up, they were foisted up as victims instead of being used as an example of what not to do. Everybody was acting like what they did, what they were well within their rights of what they did, and the police were wrong for shooting them. No. They escalated a situation that didn't need to be escalated. They got violent, and the police responded by shooting their ass. And foisting them up like victims only encouraged more black men to go do that stupid shit. And the same shit with this liberal lesbian woman. Now that she was dead wrong for doing what she did. But since everybody's reacting like she's some kind of innocent, unarmed victim, guess what? More liberals are going to think they could floor the pedal in front of ICE agents, and they're going to end up getting their asses shot off too. And honestly, I think that's what they're trying to provoke, just like they were trying to provoke more black men to get themselves shot by the police, because the more black men that got shot by the police was the more riots they could have and the more money Black Lives Matter would make. So the more liberals that can get themselves shot by ICE is the more they can condemn ICE. And considering the fact that the Democratic Party and the liberals that support them are a suicide death cult, there's going to be more. There will be more incidents like this. There will be more incidents like this. You bet your bottom dollar there'll be more incidents like this, because after everybody's hailing this woman like a victim and pretending like she didn't do anything to fuck herself over, more liberals are going to think it's okay to do that shit. But they're going to learn pretty fucking quick. Because if I was that ICE agent and I saw that woman driving that SUV towards me and I heard that engine revving with no slowing down, I would have popped her ass too. I would have emptied the mag. She's lucky he only shot once or twice. I would have put all 16 through that windshield. I would have Swiss cheese that bitch. So let's not play that stupid ass game, that stupid ass Black Lives Matter game, like she's some poor innocent victim. And anybody that's trying to play that card, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Because it was self defense. If it was anybody in that situation that was legally able to carry, they would have been justified in shooting that gun. You know how many situations where baby daddy shot baby mama because she tried to run him over with the fucking car and baby daddy got off from self defense? Or vice versa? Or road rage incidents where somebody tried to run somebody else over and they get shot up and it's self defense? Come on now. She is not no innocent victim. She was armed with a 2,000-pound SUV. She was given the opportunity to get out the fucking vehicle and surrender, and she chose not to. And in her attempt to flee, she almost ran over an ICE agent. The video is clear as day. And the only reason why he didn't get hit is because he jumped to the side the minute she floored that shit. And he still didn't move far enough because the front bumper was in contact with his left leg when he fucking shot her. So she was literally in the process of hitting him with her SUV when he shot her. And you notice in the video, there's another ICE agent standing next to the driver's side window. When she went to pull off, he didn't even see her damn near hit the other ICE agent, and he never shot her because he knew he wasn't in front of the vehicle. But the guy who was in front of the vehicle was in danger, so he shot the bitch. Classic case of fuck around and find out. And I have very little sympathy for these anti-ICE protesters because they're supporting a foreign infiltration. That's what they're doing. They're supporting the undermining of the American people, specifically black people, because these illegal aliens are moving into black communities and they're forcing the black people out. So these anti-ICE protesters, I have my bias against them. I don't like them. I don't care for them. They're enemies of my nation. So they get what the fuck comes to them. But if it was a bad shoot, I would have said it was a bad shoot. It was a good shoot. And don't let anybody ever trick you into believing that that ICE agent did something wrong. Because remember, the same people that are trying to tell you what's wrong, what's right, what's moral, and what's not, were the same ones trying to force that fucking vaccine in your arm back in 2021. So breaking news, ICE just deployed 2,000 more federal agents to Minnesota, Minneapolis and St. Paul in particular. And I believe Minneapolis was where this shooting happened. So it seems like there was more to this incident than just some crazy white woman being crazy. It seems like it could have been some sort of ambush that they set up. And this is not the first time anti-ICE protesters have used their vehicles as weapons against ICE agents, because there's been other incidents of individuals ramming their vehicles into ICE vehicles. And when you have a mayor like Jacob Fry and a governor like that broke wrist fag Tim Walz, that retard Tim Walz, telling people to resist ICE, well, of course you're going to get shit like this. So Instead of feeling sorry for that woman and trying to paint her out to be some victim, look at the stupid shit that she did and advise your fellow comrades or whatever the fuck you want to call them, advise your people to not do that. Because when there's men with guns and federal authority telling you to get out of your vehicle because you just ran into one of their vehicles, you should probably get the fuck out. But again, when you pretend like this woman is some kind of innocent victim, all that's going to do is encourage more lunatics to try the same stupid shit. And even if you think it was a bad shoot and you're outraged at the ICE officer and you're saying he could have got out the way, not let himself get hit, cool. But let's not pretend like that woman didn't have any other choice. They weren't actively shooting at her and she was fleeing as they were shooting at her. She was trying to flee as they were trying to take her out of the vehicle and arrest her ass for ramming her vehicle into theirs. Because last time I checked, if you ram your vehicle into somebody else's vehicle on the road on accident, you both stop, you both get out, you exchange information, the cops come make a report, all that stupid shit. So why is it any different if you hit a government vehicle? Get the fuck out. Excuse me. You're in violation. You're involved in an incident. So, no, that woman was not a victim. I believe it was a good shoot. And I would really like to hear the excuses from anybody that thinks it was a bad shoot. Because I saw the video and, well, it reminded me of several situations where other Americans were involved in regular traffic stops with regular police. And the same situation happened. They try to drive the car forward with a cop standing in front of them and they got shot dead. And it was considered a good shoot because, well, if you run a cop over with your car, that's assault with a deadly weapon at the very least. So it is what it is. Kobe says, I'm going to need to go be an ICE agent. I would have jumped through the window. And then what if she would have took off down the street 80 miles an hour with your legs with half your body hanging out the window? All she would have to do is sideswipe a car and you're dead. So you'd have ended up having to shoot her anyway. Well, anyway, guys, I got to get up out of here. It's getting late and I'm getting tired. So, yeah, we've been going 3.5 hours. We came $30 shy of the goal, but we got pretty close. I wish we would have got the whole thing because I could have spent this time reading the indictment. But we'll save that for another show. So on the next show, what I'll try to do is I'll give you some of the rundown on Israel and how Israel's tied to all this, and I will also finish reading the rest of that indictment, the other 23 pages, because, well, it seems pretty interesting and it seems like something that I personally want to know too. But if you guys want to find that indictment and read it yourself, it's at Justice Department or justice.gov, the Justice Department website. You can probably go on Google and just type in Maduro indictment and the PDF will come up. So you can access it that way. There are no redactions, so it's, completely open to the public. And yeah, man, so we'll go over that shit. We'll read it over and I guess I'll see you guys on the next one, man. I got to get up out of here. So don't forget, support the show. Hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. Go follow me over on Rumble. All my best content is on Rumble. And I will see you guys on the next show. Citizen Man out.